So, Chapter 11, The Odds. This is a transitionary chapter, moving us from the fall of the wall to the end of it all. True to its name, it's about establishing just how imposing Ryo Aoki is, and it hits rock bottom running. To start with, the Ijin 3 are in utter disarray. Bleach has spun the Goma Duel Fire into a massive success, them achieving what the police could not. And they've killed Ogasawara, claiming he perished in the blaze, turning him into a martyr and further galvanizing their already massive public support. In a sane world, I figure this kind of thing would be treated with far greater scrutiny than Bleach is receiving, but I'm starting to doubt I live in a sane world, so yeah, go ahead, Yakuza. Han straight up advises the group to just pack it in and run, which Ichiban can't afford to do. So, rooted in place, all we can do is prepare for the attack, and their first blow hits low. Hey Hamako, need me to beat up Totsuka again? Taking out the trash? Totsuka again, got it. Hey, part-time hero. Actually no, it turns out her doors are closing. Ichiban is handed a flyer for the Ijincho Revitalization Shelter, a Bleach-run facility with the apparent goal of helping people in the grey zones, offering training for more above-board employment as well as visas. Hamako can just feel herself turning around on Aoki. He even happens to be in town attending Ogasawara's funeral, despite his full plate.
Aoki-sanはどんなに忙しくっても仲間のためならスケジュールを縫って駆けつけてくれる情の熱い人なんだ。それをお前らは大して知りもしないでつべこべ言うんじゃないよ。
Oh, you have no idea. Rushing to the funeral, what we find is a delightfully sickening farce. Ryo Aoki delivers an entirely self-serving speech about how much Ogasawara wished to see Yokohama reborn, and how it now falls to the man he doted on most to carry out his dream. That's right, now it's your Yume Kume. The snivelling little prick is Aoki's pick for office in Yokohama. And he may be shutting the soaplands, but the man can put on the waterworks. Everyone is buying it. The crowd outside enthusiastic to carry Ogasawara's torch, not realizing the man himself was just burnt by it. Any hope of getting an audience with Aoki seems impossible, but Saiko and Adachi put their heads together and we track him to a hidden parking lot. Ichiban, you may be right, but you can't just accuse every Asakan of being Omi. He may need a pill to do it, but the man's still Solid Snake. For a moment it looks like we've lost him, but Aoki swings back around, immediately putting on the charm, and it's offensive. Luckily Ichi lands a tiny nick in the armor, and Masato tells him to come to Otahime Land alone. The Ichiban strongly advises against going, especially alone, but naturally Ichiban won't have it. He can't miss this chance, and he would never betray the young master's trust. For all his differences with Kiryu, stubbornness is one area where Ryu and Ryu go together. We arrive at the abandoned soapland, and like father like son, Masato has a taste for the theatrical. Oh, no need to sit down. I already recognized you. That was low of me. Oh, well, never mind. It's not like you ever needed legs to run your fucking mouth, now did you, dickhead? This scene starts so strong. I love how as Masato recounts his childhood, he sinks into his seat. But it's as he starts talking about all he's accomplished, Ryo Aoki emerges, spreading his weight around. I'm going to compare this moment to the reunion between Kiryu and Haruka in 6. It's a meeting we spent much of the game waiting to see, with many words built up from the truths we've uncovered along the way. Only now being face to face, there's a gulf of painful emotions which need to be crossed to even find the right words. I was a bit overly harsh and pedantic on that moment last game, but I still find this one works a lot better. Where I felt that scene in 6 left a lot unsaid in a very wobbly attempt at drama, rejecting an easy slam dunk in service of botching a Hail Mary emotional scene, this reunion is brilliantly tense. The two are here at cross purposes. Ichiban wants to talk to Masato, but Aoki is here to establish dominance. The words left unsaid are clearly motivated by the two circling each other, Ichiban trying to avoid the emotional minefield Aoki has laid out for him, but even then he's unable to hide his melancholy. He still wants what's best for Masato, but the problem is, Aoki believes he has it, and all he wants to do is show off how powerful he's grown to Ichiban. But when Ichi can only look at him with sadness, it's the first thing which actually, if only for a moment, gives him any pause. How dare this peon he used to be able to push around still pretend to care?
どうした?おめでとうございますの一言も言ってくれないのか?素直に言えないんですよね。
I gave the face acting in Yakuza 6 some shit. 7 I find puts it and body acting to better use. It's more often used in service of accenting exchanges, as opposed to being the supporting pillars of certain scenes, and it works especially well with Aoki. Those little moments where Ichiban pries at Masato's mask just by being himself. Ichiban asks, pleading in his eyes, if Masato is even happy as a politician. His answer is it's a good life, not requiring violence to assert control. Which is a rather telling answer for two reasons. One, that's not the first metric I'd go to when weighing up the quality of my own life, which is banging by Aoki's standards. Two, is the sheer amount of violence. I guess he only said you don't have to use it. Politics! You don't have to use violence, but it sure does help. This quickly brings them to Ogasawara. Aoki talks about disposing of him with a smile.
リスクマネージメントさ。
Ichiban condemns him for murdering the man without even knowing if he talked. But it takes very little effort for Aoki to suss that he did.
そりゃ、ほら見ろ。リスクマネージメントというのはそういう危険を事前に。でも一緒にブリーチジャパンを立ち上げた仲間なんでしょう。
Ichiban continuing to argue puts Aoki on the counterattack, saying it's like father, like son. Oh, so you see it too. It's just the same as Ichiban being cut loose from the Arakawa, and it turns out we weren't given the whole truth. Sawashiro was not the one who killed Suzumori.
覚えてるか?大晦日に行ったカムロ町のクラブ。ええ。若の彼女さんの誕生日で。あの夜は散々だったな。
Flashing back to 2000, we see Masato stumbling back to his chair as the ephedrine leaves his body. At his lowest ebb, hating every fibre of his being, help is the last thing he wants, screaming at bystanders for even daring to look at him. This is the moment Walt becomes Heisen. Adding insult to injury, he finds his chair, tipped over and slapped with a label for fly tipping. He passes out, only to be awoken by Suzumori, thinking him utterly legless.
こんなとこで寝てんじゃねえよ。酔っ払いが。
Masato is too far gone. He can't help but antagonize the guy. But it's as he's dragged away to be beaten, his survival instincts kick in.
素人がモデルガン出して生きがってんじゃねえよ。おもちゃだと思ってんのか。本物なら撃ってみろよ。
Fuck the Game Award to you, pal. Gotta respect the balls on this guy, yelling at a quaking Masato that he's a punk who doesn't get it until Suzu becomes the punk who does. The new year rolls over, and so does he. All along, Ichiban went to jail for his brother's sake. I like how strengthening the Yakuza 1 connection is employed as a twist, not to mention we now have all of the parallels between Ichiban and Masato. Both hit rock bottom and had a symbolic death, only to be reborn elsewhere. Now outside of the Yakuza they could seize a new life which better fit their talents. Masato as a politician, Ichiban as a hero. While Masato used money and manipulation to buy easily discarded allies, Ichiban won irreplaceable friends with no guile and even less green, just by being a good guy. Aoki cuts people loose the moment he even senses insubordination, while Ichiban bends over backwards to understand and forgive everyone their plight. Masato preyed on hatred of the underclass while sanitizing it into a noble-sounding goal. Ichiban has at every point stood up for the downtrodden, using empathy and straightforward truth to unite seeming enemies. And as it turns out, we've played right into Masato's hands, granting him the opening he needed to move on Yokohama. But while he's broken the town, he still fails to break Ichiban.
なんとか言えよ、イチ。それでも、俺は荒川のおやっさんを信じてます。
It's not even face acting alone. Sometimes it's just clever use of angles to create strong Kuleshov moments. Without a look, you can see just how Masato hates he can't get Ichi to bend, no matter how much he rubs Masumi's apparent betrayal in the guy's face. It's a wonderfully tense standoff. And with everything out of the way, it's finally time to negotiate. Masato is here with a condition. He'll let Ichiban live if he never approaches him or Dad again. So Ichiban, mistaking this for a fair meeting, presents his own condition. Pull Kume out. The man clearly doesn't belong in politics. And Aoki wholeheartedly agrees. We've known all along Kume was a tool. What we didn't know was just how much that meant. His only value is improving Aoki's.
青木亮の推薦は何の実力もない若者をトップ当選させるだけの力があるのだと理解するだろう。
Kume is such a fascinating and loathsome character, one of the most pathetic to ever do it. Or not ever do it in all likelihood. And as for those revitalization shelters, well, they're even more useful. A way to round up and deport immigrants.
そんな。それじゃ彼女たちを騙したのか。犯罪者を一掃して偉人帳を再生するシェルター。
Oh, that's sick. You are a fucking politician, mate. And as should be obvious, he's not taking the deal. He's taking it all, our life included.
さっきも言ったろ。お前を生かしておいてやるのは俺からの情けだ。それを無下にするなら好きにするがいい。
Yo, Joe.
こっちは約束通り一人なんですよ。こっちだ一番。
And save. I love these guys. That's what's great in a story like this. The party still feels like a group of actually autonomous characters. They respect Ichiban's loyalty and honor, but they're not going to share his blind spots. They're ready to push the story forward in their own ways. Still, we run into yet more Omi, and Sawashiro leaves us to face the Horde.
頭は帰るんですか。お前らの汚い血でスーツを汚したくないからな。
So we're put against Officer Matoba. Perhaps the least characterful boss in the game, though he tries hard for an immediate impression. Problem is, my bat makes a bigger one on him. It seems we've won a moment of respite, but then Hamako comes running, having only just learned the truth of the shelters.
あの子たちは自分が生まれた国に頼れる人間なんていないんだ。だから偉人帳に身を寄せていたんじゃないか。私はね、私はあの子たちの幸せだけが生きがいだったんだ。
I wouldn't be surprised for someone thinking Hamako's actions in this chapter seem far too naive for her, but that's why I find this moment actually hits so hard. In each snippet, we see how she's both determined and wise to the world, and she uses those qualities to stand up for those around her, holding out in the hopes of giving people a better life. It's a hope which Aoki expertly exploited. You can fault her for her short-sightedness, but the fault lies with those who put the blinders on, for disguising a trap as the opportunity she's been waiting on, playing on her good nature. As the group sits alone, defeated, Number repeats what Han advised. Perhaps it's time to get out of here. So, Ichiban asks a pointed question.
ちなみにナンバーはどっか行くあてがあんのか。
いや、すぐには思い浮かばないけどよ。
足立さんは
親もとっくに亡くなってるし、今さら行くあてって言われてもな。最後は
とてもじゃないけど、妹とお父さんを置いて出ていけないわ。
じゃあ決まりじゃねえか。
決まり？何が？
みんなここから出ていけるような状況じゃねえ。そりゃ俺たちもコミジルもリューマンもみんな同じだ。だったら抗うしかねえだろ。取り返しがつかねえってんならなおさら取り返してやろうじゃねえか。
でも賞賛があんのか？
そんなもん必要ねえ。昔荒川のおやっさんに言われたよ。賞賛があって殴りに行くのはただの弱い者いじめだってな。
That's a pretty strong condemnation of the game's balancing, Ichi. Jokes aside, I love this speech. I love this chapter. It tells a great little, almost isolated story, bridging the twist-heavy middle into the deep character refocus of the ending stretch. True to its name, it not only shows us the odds, it shows us the various ways Ichiban and Masato are at odds. By this point, I'd happily call Masato not only a really deep character, but one of the series' best schemers. And I love how his brilliance in that regard ties so deeply with his core motivation of punishing the grey zones for how pathetic they once made him feel. He's instilled in his followers the very thing that drives him, a deep hatred dressed up as a righteous crusade. And at this point, our lead's backs are to the wall, and if there's no choice but to fight, they're going out swinging.
日本の表と裏の頂点に喧嘩か。
な、さすがに足立さんもビビっちまってんの？
バカ言え。相手に不足はねえ。やってやろうじゃねえか。ただその表の頂点ってのに警視庁も加えてくれねえか。
そうだった。もちろん分かってるって。よっしゃ。ナンバー、さっちゃん、俺らと一緒に。
はいはい。
もう結論出てるから。
決まりだな。どいつもこいつも今に見てろよ。
That's Chapter 11, and Aoki should be filing for Chapter 11 moral bankruptcy. Sometime later we find Ichiban meeting with the heads of the Aegean Three, no longer in the palatial Heian Tower, but Cho's much humbler digs. The food may be sweet, but the mood is definitely sour.
青木亮がこの偉人帳を自分の色に染める手始めが彼ってわけだね。
となりゃもはや日本中がなるようにしかならねえ。
Ichiban is here to convince them not to lie down. Cho quickly agrees.
俺は半品リューマン全員の命をあんたに預けたんだぜ。このままじゃカッコつかねえだろ。
And before long, the group is talking strategy. Since killing Kume is sadly not an option, we'll just have to beat Aoki at his own game, field a local candidate and win the election. There's a few issues here, but the big one is running costs money. 3 million yen to be precise. Well, lucky for us, I have all that and more burning a hole in my pocket. But where would the #1 trash man Ichiban Kasuga ever find so much money? Well, sit down, get comfy, and let me tell you a tale. After all, I said I was cool with flashbacks. Shortly after Nonomiya's passing, we stumbled upon a mysterious, easily rattled woman rattling his doors. Say hello to Eri, president of Ichiban Confections, a once prosperous company fallen on hard times, conned by greedy vultures. Eri was about to hand the business over to the slippery soapland sod, as it was only thanks to him there was anything left to salvage. The boys are somehow surprised by this kind gesture, but Saiko explains that when Nonomiya was drunk, he'd often ramble about going legit so he could build a safety net for Ijincho. Ichiban decides there and then he's going to pick up where Nonomiya left off. And he has the gang's full, partial... he has their blessing. They'll be drinking at Survive.
町の人を救うなんて勇者みたいでかっこいいじゃねえか。
Yeah, future traitor. Don't go tripping over your invisible brother on the way out. At their dingy little office, Ichiban is ran through the basics of business, and basically, this business is screwed. We're in the red, investors have left us on red. We may be a confectionery, but we're not baked, we're cooked. We need capital and we need it quick. If only we knew someone who could lend us some money. Ichiban calls Ogata. Swayed by our story, he fronts us the funds with some fairly slack strings attached. Our goal is to become Yokohama's #1, no matter how long it takes. So here we go. Welcome to Yakuza 7's money game, Ichiban Holdings. It's a worse version of Real Estate Royale. I'm sorry, business just stopped being fun after the 80s. We're not even allowed to embezzle anymore. Our holdings and Ichiban Holdings holdings are separate, and never the two shall meet. I don't actually mind that, but this is the first sign the real world and the business world are now worlds apart. Allow me to quickly run you through a day at the office. We can buy and upgrade businesses. Each has different sales volumes, which is how much profit they bring in, as well as a base maintenance expense, how much they cost to run. Each business also possesses free requirements and just as many slots into which you can place employees. Upgrading volume increases requirements, while upgrading requirements fulfills them. Employees have preferred industries, as well as differing specializations in each area. They've each got a base salary which scales with promotions, raising their level caps. Very much the opposite of the Peter principle, you can only be as good as your title permits. Their mood also drops with each shift, requiring counselling to fix them back up. The hell is this bakery putting them through? The oven itself? The core of the game is arranging all of your pieces to maximise profit while minimising expenditure. A miserly, but not entirely miserable time, and I've probably made it sound way more complicated than it is. Look, all you need to know is, put things in places where the bars get longer and the number gets bigger. That's all you need to know. You then hit go, and watch the money come flooding in. This screen is so charming at first. wears off by the 50th time you see it. Thus ends a round. There are 4 rounds in a business period, and between each there's a chance of encountering a small selection of random events. We may get approached by potential employees. Other businesses may try and poach ours, and we either have to give them a raise or let them go. And because we're apparently an ethical employer, we can't write dodgy contracts to stop this. There are seminars which temporarily buff training effectiveness, letting employees level faster. Certain industries may have booms, giving a minor bonus to their income. The jackpot are advertising slots, acting as a power-up massively boosting our profits for several turns.
営業開始だ。はい。
一番せんべいだ。あ、一番製菓の社長の春日一番さんだ。
私が社長です。
That's the best part of the mode, by the way. I like to imagine Sawashiro catching this on telly and getting so angry he starts lopping fingers off. After 4 rounds, we end the business period with a shareholder meeting, another form of JRPG combat, and it's a sorry skirmish. Literally. You must lead your sales soldiers in a struggle against your shareholders' worries. This is the good Janken Yokohama talked about. Team composition truly matters here. Everyone is strong against one business type and weak against another. Each employee also grants and costs differing amounts of command points. Some employees are best kept just for these showdowns. I love the use of time. You're very much on the clock here, so spend it as wisely as your money. Do you blow all your energy at once in big attacks or string things out a little? You gotta prioritize the big threat and talk them down first. It really does feel like you're batting aside their concerns. So short and long-term strategies are both in play, and all along Ichiban is building up a super sorry which can give you a last-second rally.
株主の皆さん、この度は誠に申し訳ありませんでした。
It wasn't until very late in the game the 2-minute time limit stopped feeling oppressive, and after each of these apology-laden altercations, Ichiban finally gets his own bit of spending money. His wage growing with the business. This is the easiest intended way of getting a ton of money in the game. It's as we hit certain levels of income, and especially after successful shareholder meetings, our share price and rank increases. We're occasionally given soft time limits to reach certain ranks by Nick, and beating those grants some money as we go into the next tier. So if you're playing well, momentum just tends to build faster and faster. If this mode's easy, it will just get easier. If you're struggling, it's not going to get harder, but it's just going to stay much the same. So, this mode isn't bad, but as I've said, I do like it a lot less than the Real Estate Royale. Sure, having to leave the office and wait for business to be concluded was a drag, but the rhythm connected you to the city. It encouraged you to go out and have fun. Actually having to hunt down businesses to buy added more meaning to the map. It was an extra layer of exploration. There are many buildings you will never look at in Yakuza, which is a shame as even the ones you need never interact with are distinct. This made it so the player had a reason to actually scan all this unique modelling and texture work. Is this an improvement? Well, okay, I'm sure most would agree it is. But now we're stuck in the office for long stretches. There's a reason the word grind is in grind set. You're grinding yourself down. Humans aren't meant to be ground down. I'll say it, this is premium podcast gaming right here. Just whack on whatever you want to listen to and just zone out until it's done. The core of it is, much like the combat, a maths problem. Huh, maybe all those stupid business guys were right to be reading The Art of War. Anyway, it's not an especially hard one, which makes this victory not especially hard won. Owing to the game's structure, I feel like I only needed to solve the problem once at the start, and then I just coasted until it was time to clock off. I'll bet some of you, especially those listening to this at work, are nodding your heads going, yep, sounds like work. The only friction I ever had was early on, where I had to weigh up taking a loan to meet Ogata's first, and really only intimidating deadline, crossing it not even really in the nick of time. This worked out, but I at least felt like I was skating on thin ice for a moment. And from there on out, there were never any stakes or drama ever again. Because after this, all I did was rejigger, slowly replacing parts of my empire. Less profitable businesses got the cut, and less powerful peons got the axe. All the while building a larger reserve of cash which only made things easier. Ad slots are only ever something you might have to pass on once. Afterwards, you'll always have enough of a war chest to take them whenever offered, as there's no risk to doing so. It will always pay off. It's a pure money multiplier. It doesn't take long before there's no threat, and with that there's no sense of escalation. The game just settles into a dull routine. So now I've given you the overview, let's zoom in here and there. It's as my empire grew I had a thought. Man, managing men is meandering. This is a menu game. It's all about leafing through lists and allocating your resources for maximum gain. And I often felt the game could stand to gain by making things more convenient. You want to know what the worst part of being a CEO is? Firing people. And no, it's not because of the emotional toll it takes to rip someone's livelihood away from them, making them a disappointment to their friends and loved ones, eventually leaving them destitute as they hit rock bottom. None of that namby-pamby nonsense. It's because finding the useless buggers gets really annoying when you're juggling so many people. I should fire all of you for hiding this guy from me. There are many sorting options to make initial placement simple, but there's no quick way to find unassigned employees who are just sitting around collecting a paycheck. You have to hunt down the man with free time. And believe me, that's a 7-hour chore. Restructuring is even worse. There's no way to easily swap employees from one post to another, leading to tons of just sifting through menus to figure out who's assigned where, who's free to be placed, who can be let go. And God forbid you remove someone from an active post when you didn't want to. You gotta go find the bugger again. Zero may have required more frequent employee turnover, but its segmented turn structure made it much easier to manage. So I don't like these menus. But I've spent enough time in and thinking about them to explore a very boring thought. Am I right to want these menus to be more fluid? Now, it may sound like a no-brainer, but follow me on this for a moment. The challenge of Ichiban Holdings is carrying out the role of a corporate president. The idea of one, anyway, heavily simplified. These menus are, in effect, the gameplay. If I'm asking for tools to easily filter redundant employees or quickly and easily assign the right people to the best posts, am I really asking for better gameplay? Or is this equivalent to wanting an instant win button during the battles? I mean, surely this has to be the difficulty curve, but as my resources grow, so does the job of managing them. Am I deciding I don't like a thing and rather than engage with it as a meaningful choice, it would just be better if it could be skipped entirely? Also, I can go back to watching this. I guess watching the money roll in is the real job of a CEO and anything else is merely a distraction. There is a problem with supposing this as the challenge, and that's that there's no actual pressure. There's no ticking clock tasking me with efficient menu navigation. I mean, that would be horrible, but the point stands. If there's no risk of loss, what's lost by making this get out of the way as smoothly as possible, all while leaving micromanaging to the real number crunchers? What complicates this is there are conveniences present, which means they knew at least some of this was needless busy work. I genuinely can't recall if it was there on release, but there's an auto care button. While I've never added it up, I've always just assumed it's less cash efficient than manually assigning care per employee. But even at my poorest, this was never an issue. I could always afford to skip this gameplay. Perhaps automatically doing best placements could have required hiring consultants. Putting a price on automation may have been key here, but then there truly would be no gameplay. In a sense, the game keeping this rock paper scissors diagram on screen during the business battles is pointless. When Like a Dragon first released, the weakness indicator wasn't enabled, both here and in regular encounters. I genuinely figured this was a purposeful design decision, as asking the player to memorize weaknesses isn't too tall an ask. At worst, it punishes players with a trip to the menu. Meanwhile, it rewards those paying attention, making picking the right element a little more gratifying. The pressure in these battles is making the right choice as options and complications grow, and the right choice may not always be hitting a weakness. So, I don't think the indicator is a necessity, but I didn't mind it being added because it was a minor smoothing of the experience. In business battles, putting aside Ichiban's super move, there is only one choice: who attacks who. The pressure isn't in multitude of choices, but making the right one against the clock. In this instance, the weakness indicator may be seen itself as a weakness, as it substantially decreases the difficulty and makes the rock-paper-scissors diagram almost pointless beyond informing a player that strengths and weaknesses even exist. You can see my playstyle is to pick the most dangerous foe and then just mash through my options until I'm told what the right one is. Looked at a certain way, I'm no longer playing the game. The UI is playing me. And let's go further with this. The biggest convenience may also be the most self-defeating. The button to end your turn and see how business plays out tells you ahead of time, with great accuracy, how business will play out. Meaning it's all but impossible to go into deficit unless you're actively sabotaging yourself. Would this mode be better if it was up to the player to break out a calculator and add it all up themselves? Even I wouldn't want that. But I also believe this makes the game far less exciting than it could have been. It'd be like if Balatro told you if your hand would pass ahead of submitting it. It would severely dampen how much the player needs to engage with mechanics and put thought into their moves. It would make the experience far more disposable because the game is essentially playing itself for you. I think that's the difficulty of putting a mode like this in what's otherwise a fairly light, casual experience. It simply can't allow itself to be too demanding. I should clarify, this section is more of a thought experiment. I actually really doubt I'd like this mode anymore if anything I said was implemented. I may have even loathed it if it came out this way. Not being in that parallel universe, we'll never know. But I was left with a lot of time to think over such inane things, as I leafed through these rather unappealing menus. While it's to a lesser extent, the game does still tie into the open world, with applicants and investment opportunities hidden all over town. So you know where I'm going first, right? What? I can't hire this man? Come on, RGG, you had to have known people would want the book cooking bum in their employ. Oh, I'm sorry, fella. I've got my own company, but it seems I can't have yours. You can find extra people in two ways. Just like in Zero, most of your units are going to be people returning from sub-stories to help out. Or ask for a handout in this case. Again, a fun reward, even if it feels a lot more impersonal this time around given the decreased ties to the actual town. The rest of the applicants are gathered in two ways. They either require a fetch quest to get them on board, or being up to their standards in what's a bizarre reverse job interview. This is where your personality scores really come into play. So far we've seen two ways they can be gained, via choices in drink links and filling out the completion screen, becoming a more complete person. We can also buy items from vendors. The more powerful ones are some of the most costly items in the game. You know how they say money can't buy taste? Well, Like a Dragon says otherwise. But the biggest source of personality is the Onabara Vocational School. We're inducted by Ikari, a man who isn't half as bright as the blinding torch he carries for Miyakoshi. And ironically, she's the only one who can't see it. This is another big-ticket new minigame, Quizzes. A perfectly serviceable, though not groundbreaking mode of play, again carried by Seven's ample charm. And hey, who doesn't love a quiz? I love sitting down, watching the chase and feeling clever for getting one answer right. Before Ichiban Holdings takes off, these certifications are prohibitively expensive. You're spending a lot of money to risk boosting a stats system, which has at best nebulous function before this point, and at best nebulous use thereafter. I did notice that even after earning every cert the school offered, I was still pretty far from fully rounded. Really goes to show how work and school can't complete a person. At least after 10 quizzes, Ikari himself joins Ichiban Holdings as a pretty powerful employee, so that's the best I'm getting out of this. So as I've said repeatedly, I do find this thinner than Zero's Real Estate Royale. But there is still interplay between the game world and the business world. 7 does still acknowledge your engagement in other aspects of the game. Perhaps the reason I'm finding it so easy was because my investments elsewhere were paying dividends. And hey, if you really want to invest, you can just spend some real money to get the utterly broken DLC units. For how easy I've made this sound, I could have been laughing all the way to the bank. If you buy this DLC, you're essentially paying to not play a part of the game. The story of Ichiban Holdings is as thin as the chapter we're on, with a by-the-numbers plot where with each boss you go, by number. The numbers this time are the Mischievous Three, led by the malevolent money man Hosho, who crushed Eri to get back at her father for having the audacity to run an ethical business, a matter which has no effect on the gameplay despite being the motivation which led Ichiban here in the first place. I would have sold Ichiban Senbei and Eri's grandmother if the game allowed me. It's a sentimental chain around my ankle. And even then, we're not much of a safety net considering the game actively rewards us hiring the best and firing the rest. Dropping businesses the moment something more profitable comes along, and cutting every corner we can get away with besides employee care, which we only have to care about because it boosts us in the shareholder meetings. And that's where the Mischievous Three and Hosho turn up as bosses. And I'm not sure if it's because I was particularly liberal about throwing my money around, but I tended to find these guys lagged behind the difficulty curve of the standard investors. But hey, I had a great moment where I defeated the sweatshop slayer with the power of child labor. So, good stuff. I'm sorry, I'm still banging this drum. This is way less interesting than the Real Estate Royale bosses challenging us to minigames about town. And really, the Mischievous Three? The game seems as bored by this format as I am. We have the Devil Killers, the 5 Billionaires, the 5 Stars, the 6 Lunatics, another one-note story proudly trotting out one-note characters doing one-note jokes, when really, these guys should be nothing but notes. It lacks the tactility of Zero's games and the actual plotting of 5 side stories. I miss these modes having casts with something going on under the surface, with pacing which fits how the mode develops, with actual ambition to tell a story, instead of now where everything has to fit into this tiresome mold. Eri and her grandmother Tomei are, to me, just kind of boring. They do get off one good gag when Ichiban frets over asking them to abandon their old home office to upgrade at Nick's command, only for them to actually be overjoyed by the idea. It's the one moment which breaks from the formula of Granny insisting Ichiban is the Ichi boyfriend, Eri getting flustered and Ichiban calling her an old bat or something, and then the chicken makes a noise hoping you'll pagork at it. It feels redundant to call this rote. As I mentioned, they already wrote this shit. It's just the second time a chicken has been involved. Eri does at least join us as the one and only optional party member, and that's rather exciting. She also has a unique approach to bond levels, with it rising as your share rank does. Less drink links, more LinkedIn. And we also get some powerful attacks out of the deal. And Ichiban Holdings doesn't totally hold out on us. The same way Ichiban has been placed in Yokohama by Arakawa gets a parallel in Nick helping Ichiban to further his own interests behind enemy lines. We are once again helping someone else up from rock bottom, and the story pays lip service to the idea of helping the downtrodden, even if it isn't putting its vast reserves of money where its mouth is. The charm of this mode is really more in the grand tapestry of the game. How we started out scraping change from under vending machines to changing the very fabric of this town. Going from rock bottom to upper crust. It's just that what lies in the middle is a middling management minigame. Anyway, we topple Hosho, Eri gets to deck him one, and Nick turns up to pretend this was about something. And that's how I can generate 3 million yen in less than 10 minutes. Well, that's nice and all, Ichiban, but did you have to explain the vocational school? Well, old man, with age comes wisdom, but with money comes shortcuts. So I'll drop the cash off tonight. But then the call comes in. Arakawa is about to make his move, and we're needed. The news is broken to the group.
待てよ一番。なんだよ急に大阪に行くって。
Ichi is itching to get to Osaka to help. It's cute how he's almost reverted to a kid at just the idea of seeing Arakawa again.
お前向こうで素性を知れたらやべえだろ。よく考えろよ。
でも助けがいるっておやつさんが言ってんだ。
Most of the group are hesitant, but they know there's no point in arguing.
いいね。俺大阪にはまだ行ったことないんだよね。
We deliver the money to Hoshino. Yeah, enjoy it, mate. This was meant to be a nest egg, and not just because I earned it with child labour and a literal chicken. Upon receiving the news we're leaving town, we learn Hoshino has heard rumblings. Masaru Watase is getting out of the joint, and this will be his first meeting with Arakawa, who from Watase's perspective may as well appeared out of thin air and claimed his spot. One wrong move from our old man could spell disaster. Hoshino tells Ichi he too needs to be cautious. Well, Hoshino, start shooting and see who sticks around. Meanwhile, Aoki is taking the news hard, because this is news to him. Sawashiro is meant to report Arakawa's every move, but it seems Dad has acted without warning.
もし事前に連絡もなく渡瀬を消した後も報告もないようだったら、それは俺への裏切りだ。絶対に許さん。親父が若を裏切るなんてことは。いや、裏切りだ。ヤクザが力を震えるのはあくまで俺の勘。
He suspects Dad is planning to kill Watase and take the reins of the Omi for himself, as the chairman is terminally ill. Okay, so the game never goes into who is the current Omi chairman, but I really like to believe Tsubasa is still alive, just hanging on out of sheer spite.
沢城、俺と親父、お前はどっちに？俺は親父から若のことを託された人間です。
Nice little two-faced answer there, Joe. So we're in Osaka and the gang is having a grand old time. Well, all except for Ichi. The man is restless, irritable, downright dying to see the boss. Luckily, a drunken Adachi has an idea.
そんなにカリカリするくらいならさっさと本部に行っちまえよ。
He may actually die seeing the boss. Well, if we're planning to break into another base, we'd better do some prep. So off we go to Donkey No. I don't like these robots. Luckily this one leads us into something I kinda do. Welcome to the Sotenbori Battle Arena, my favourite optional dungeon in the game, being about as close as 7 gets to a coliseum. It's 30 floors of battles, which aren't too tough, but do come with optional challenges to claim rare and powerful items. Though given the nature of the game, these optional challenges are closer to a secondary level check. Do you lose, do you win, or do you win easily? If easily, get prizes to further lower the difficulty. It does at least demand more of the player in a way which adds genuine intensity, but only if you enter it at exactly the right level. It just has very limp means of ensuring that. This is a very conspicuous opportunity to grind, but considering what's ahead, it pretty much had to be. The game has led you to water and you better drink deep, or else the only pool in your future is your own blood. Depending on how you look at it, this may not even count as optional content. This aside, welcome back to Osaka, and it's Sotenbori. There's some fun party chats, but aside from that, what do we got? We got golf. I don't like golf. It makes me want to hit people. So let's just get to Omi HQ. And well, hitting people's gonna have to wait. This is a stealth operation. It's better and worse than the one in Yakuza 6. Better in that it's a stealth section with some actual stealth. Worse, well, actually arguably improved, by being even more ramshackle than last time. Remember, the Omi are only out for Kasuga. So these civvies and, the ghost of Korean's past, well, they get a pass. It says we approach the dragon chamber where Arakawa awaits, Ichiban is spotted and just kinda gives up.
春日です。春日一番。
おい、アドリブしろよ。
もう遅え。仕方ねえだろ。
We make short work of the grunts, but then it happens.
No?
We've rustled the Jimas. And look, I'm happy to see you, really I am, but why are you still dressed like that? I like to think he just broke out of jail again and somehow wound up with another Parker. Then again, he splashed out on a pricey one, so maybe the guy realized he's sticking with them. He has one buried outside every jail in the country. I was blown away when he wasn't wearing one in Hawaii. I need you to understand, this is the most character development the Brick Shithouse has had since 2012. It's taken almost as long for Saejima to take off his coat as it has for the series to retire Kiryu. The gang immediately senses something is off about these two. Oh, they mean their power level. Yeah, sure. And unlucky for us, they've no interest in raising the alarm. Welcome to a life-changing fight. And by that I mean, it changes your life to 0.
Shit.
An infamous difficulty spike, one that goes right up your ass. I'd say I dodged it this time, knowing what I was in for, but this is where my hard mode aspirations were cut short, so I still got the experience. Call me Phineas Gage because I should have known better, yet the spike still blew up in my face. I mostly find power scaling completely asinine, but here, it works. As far as difficulty spikes go, this may be one of the most narratively appropriate I've ever seen, and it's awesome. Everyone loves how hype it is to face former player characters, it's always an exciting moment. This one achieves that and more by showing that at this point, the crew are mere mortals trespassing in the domain of legends. Surviving this boss is an act of constant healing, buffing, and debuffing. It's the first real scramble in the game, enforcing that from here on, the Ichiban have to really rely on each other to have a shot at getting by. There's a little mini-arc through this chapter of Ichiban thinking this is too much for them and he has to go it alone.
道中お気をつけて。
ほらイケメン勝手に見送ろうとしてんじゃないっての
And they've shut him down at every turn. The game declaring this man is not allowed to be a Kiryu. And if he came here alone, he wouldn't have made himself a dragon. He'd have been dragged out by his ankles. He needs them. Another aspect to this fight, just speaking from a weird fan angle, isn't this kinda heartwarming? Not just because it finally gets my blood rate up, I mean seeing these two finally getting to fight side by side. For all I complained about fan service earlier, I find RGG is pretty reserved and tasteful in this regard. By that I mean keeping time between certain characters brief to add impact and often tragedy. Here are the two Jimas finally getting to work together, and we see what a terrifying pair the two can be. If you're an OLAD, this is an area where you're really missing out. Also for any OLADs and anyone new to the series, that one actually isn't Ichiban's imagination. Majima can just do that. This power scaling is then much less elegantly reinforced, ending the fight showing the gang struggling to stand while Majima and Saejima haven't even worked up a sweat.
もうお互い遠慮はいらんちゅうわけや。
Although again, in the context of the series, I think longtime fans were happier that the only thing Ichiban could hope to win is the old cast's approval. And even that's tenuous. It's a sliver of respect for at least not dying on impact. There would have been riots if the Ichiban actually stood a chance against these two, and it winds up leaving them with plenty of room to grow. Fortunately for the gang, the fight is called off.
喧嘩の続きは明日まで取っといてくれねえか、Ichi.
Arakawa, followed by yet another surprise appearance.
Ichi. こちらは東上会6代目、堂島会長だ。
A sweet moment of the group surrounding Ichiban, not sharing his blind enthusiasm for the boss. Masumi, for his part, does seem regretful.
Ichiを撃ったら死ねえよ。
だったら俺らに信じさせてくれ。
And it's upstairs we're told what's going on. Arakawa never betrayed the Tojo. When Masato demanded information for his 3K plan, Masumi was obviously hesitant. Sawashiro told him to exchange the information for being kept around.
さしら、マサと俺よりも甘やかしちまうところがある。
Ultimately, Masumi went to Daigo to inform him of his son's plans, and he told him to go ahead and play the part of the traitor.
俺が頼んで、荒川さんには欲深い非情な裏切り者を演じてもらったんだ。そしてそれが結果的にお前を銃で撃たせることにもなってしまった。
I mean, he was clearly borrowing some of your accuracy. Daigo could see the way the world was going. Anti-Yakuza laws have grown so open to interpretation, the police can effectively bend them to their will.
いずれ大門を掲げることはむしろ連中の奴隷であることの証ってことになる。
The arrest of Watase, now Omi captain, was all caused because of an underling resisting police harassment. This was the writing on the wall for Daigo, so he decided it's better for the Yakuza to die free than live as slaves, seeing this as a way to hasten a merciful death. He allowed the 3K plan to happen and has been in hiding ever since. Tomorrow marks not only Watase's release, but also Daigo's.
日本の二大極道組織、近江連合と東上会を解散させる。
And that's why we're here. We're the backup when these two tell hundreds of thousands of men, whose job is to be good at violence, that the gig is over. Tomorrow is going to be the retirement party of a lifetime. They've anticipated how this will go, and the sixth chairman has laid out every detail. Oh yeah, this will be good. So the next day the gang return to Omi headquarters. We definitely stick out like a sore thumb. Tendo challenges our presence but is told to stand down by Arakawa.
今日は頭の出所祝いに時刻から駆けつけてくれたんだ。
Now come on, Ijincho isn't that bad.
今日は何が起きるんや？楽しみにさせてもらうで。期待していいぜ。
何しろ近江連合がひっくり返るような騒ぎが起きるんだ。
何？
I love that. That's the shit Kiryu couldn't pull. Watase pulls into HQ, and the crowd bows. Great use of camera angles with foreshadowing so slight, I only caught it on replay. The officers part, no idea what's about to happen.
わずかな人数で私たち関西近江連合が立ち上げられたのは100年以上前になります。創世紀には敵対する組織との抗争も引き起こし、多くの人命が失われた歴史もあります。地域住民の皆様におかれては、我々に対して恐怖感、威圧感を抱かれた方々も多く、誠に申し訳ございませんでした。
What a play, Watase. Man, you're full of those.
関西近江連合を解散いたします。
The discomfort quickly turns to anger, only worsened when Daigo joins him on stage.
東上会6代目、堂島大吾だ。東上会も近江連合と同じく本日をもって正式に解散する。俺と渡瀬さんは互いに今回の組織解散の見届け人だ。
At this point, it's mere moments before violence breaks out, stoked by Watase daring the crowd to defy him. Tendo, knowing where the action is, flips to our side. His winning smile wins me over, and Ichiban hypes this up as the most exciting moment of his life. It's time for him to finally step out of the shadows. It's a message aimed at the audience, trying to hype them up for what is really a scene which loses all energy the moment it falls on the shoulders of the gameplay to sustain it. This is another instance where turn-based gameplay really works against the scenario. What's meant to look like pandemonium looks more like an awkward dinner party. The active enemies barely hiding the legion of lads just awkwardly standing around. Life is drained from the room faster than even head trauma can keep up with. This encounter needed some kind of gimmick or else far more active backgrounds because right now, Ichiban's imagination is lacking. Yeah, this is more like it. This is the good chaos. Is it sad I'd have rather just had a cutscene? It's so funny to me that the Yakuza's last moment, for reasons only known to a small handful are in on, is joined by a bum, a booze hound, and a barmaid who just so happened to be there. Oh, and that's not all. We're also joined by a ghost.
なんだ。
やっぱり生きとったか。
帰ってきよったな。堂島の竜が。
What? What to say and Kiryu act cryptic, and we get another round of really dull combat where we just have to sit with that. The stragglers are mopped up and the VIPs make their exit, Kiryu turning and giving the new blood his approval. Little contrived, but sure, I'll take it. The scene does end on a high note at least. Ichiban, too tired to move, genuinely overjoyed to be reunited and useful to his father figure. It's a really upbeat moment, our first bit of hope in so long.
本当によく生きててくれたな。Ichi.
So I have some really mixed feelings on this scene, and we can't get into all of them right away. You know what I was thinking when I first played this in 2019? I was thinking of the Ham Man. I had just replayed Yakuza 4 for the video, and the game was still fresh in my mind, especially the messages it decided to leave on, which the rest of the series quickly left in the past. Namely, the idea Kamurocho and the Tojo are the lead's responsibility, that their lives must be spent ensuring its legacy and preservation. So for whatever reason, I think I'm the only person on Earth who is playing this and feeling bad for Hamazaki. Honestly, 4 is so hilariously ignored in the series chronology, and honestly, much as I like that game, it was for the best. I didn't see it that way back then. And just like with Kamurocho falling to the Omi, I hated this moment. I saw it as the latest and greatest of Daigo Dojima's failures, throwing in the towel and giving up when the going got tough, and invalidating an entire series worth of struggle in the process. All the while doing it in the stupidest, most tone-deaf, self-defeating way possible. I love the resulting power vacuum this leads to, but of course that would happen. You didn't explain anything to these people. But for reasons both my own and because of what's happened since, I no longer see it that way. I've reevaluated my feelings on Daigo a ton since then. When I first played this, I had somehow done that ignoring all the politics, politicking, and theming, and just saw this in a literal fan mindset. How dare you throw out the things I like? And no, I refuse to understand why. I was just as mad as the crowd we beat down to allow this to happen. It's now I understand this is the culmination of years worth of build-up, inspired by the real-life diminishing role of the Yakuza in Japanese society just as much as the events of the game. This shit actually happened the other day. Like a Dragon may be a soap opera, but reality is truly stranger than fiction. And in the series itself, we've seen the clan's power, prestige, and purpose wane. Yakuza 6 showing them at their most pointless, a once proud entity now thoroughly devoid of humanity. What Daigo is doing here is preserving the Tojo's legacy by letting it go out on its own terms. To explain to these men why it has to end would not only sap the scene of energy, it would make the Tojo's finale weak instead of defiant, and likely done nothing to change what happened next regardless. This has also led to an arc which is still ongoing in the series today, the dissolution of the Yakuza. In concept, I find this a really interesting idea, but the execution has been rocky to say the least. I know how weird this must sound. I very much like all of the motivations and mechanics behind this twist, even though I don't much like the twist itself. I like how Masumi's role as a traitor is revealed to be a gambit, as the game has handled suspicion of him very well throughout. Daigo's move to let the Yakuza die free rather than live as slaves is a nice ironic capstone to his tenure as chairman, a role placed on him by Kiryu where he had very little real control over such a duplicitous organization. And in the immediate plot, this is our first proper move against Masato.
まあ、青木は自分の手柄に思わせたつもりだったろうが、真実は我々がそれに乗ってやったまでということだ。
As well as that, it's the first thing which establishes that winning this time is going to require a new approach, a new mindset, a shedding of the old ways. And on top of that, it is a genuinely shocking swerve. And I suppose that's part of my problem. It's such a big shift for the series and it hits you out of nowhere. It gives you no time to sit with it. And yes, this chapter is titled The End of the Yakuza, but you know what I'm getting at. Playing as Ichiban during this moment, while we're still heavily involved, Almost feels like we're being sat at the children's table while the adults do the talking. For something with such huge ramifications for the series, which feel like the culmination of years of build-up, it plays like a drive-by, and not an entirely accurate one. It's dizzying and breathless when really it feels like it needs room to breathe. And perhaps we're meant to share in the shock, much like with Kamurocho. Not to mention, it's also overshadowed by so much else happening in this story. It's like, okay folks, that's it. It's the end of Yakuza. We'll be right back with Like a Dragon. So we go from a scene that I'm not sure I like, to one I'm certain I love. Ichiban and Masumi reconnecting at the Yokohama promenade. The night is already over, and Ichiban can't hide his sadness Masumi has to go early, and Masumi himself doesn't want to. In this moment, he knows the life is over. He's trying to enjoy that fact, but he's been Yakuza for so long he can't switch it off, even as he tells himself. They talk about the ongoing confusion, and Masumi frets about Masato, because in a way, he's finally free to be a father.
いい加減それがでかくなりすぎる前に止めてやらねえとあいつは身を滅ぼすそんなあいつの姿を俺は見たくねえ
Ichiban asks what's next, and Daigo plans on setting up a legal means to give the former Yakuza a place to go. Now, that sounds like some kind of honest living association. I only wish I knew someone who could help. After this, Ichiban asks the big question, one which turns this scene into one of my favorites.
おやっさんの子分にしてくれますか?
俺はお前を
All the wrongs Masumi did to Ichi come flooding out of him, and Ichiban forgiving, overlooking, downright disregarding each one absolutely kills the man inside. It makes it worse to have done all of this to someone who trusted him so fully, so deeply. Everything Ichiban does in this scene to try and cheer Masumi up only makes him feel worse, because he knows what he's done makes him unworthy of such devotion. It's fucking heart-wrenching. When the two of them were in the clan, Masumi said the only thing that mattered was one's face. You have to look stern, uncaring, unflappable. It's what allowed him to be such a great actor, what allowed him to carry out his role as traitor. Now, the job is done. The Yakuza is over. His face no longer matters. And now that he's free to laugh, now that he's free to cry, the last thing he wants is for Ichiban to see it. He recounts a dream he has, Masato being born in Ichiban's place in Shangri-La.
やめてください恥ずかしいっす
恥ずかしいことなんてねお前は地に足をつけてしっかり生きてる生まれた場所なんて関係ね
He asks if Ichiban ever wanted to meet his parents, which is a really on-the-nose bit of foreshadowing, but it works because of just how deep and complicated the feelings between these two are. Ichiban is thrown by the question. When Masumi backs off from the fort, he gives Ichiban an awkward smile and says there's no point dwelling. Ichiban can only awkwardly smile back, unsure how to respond. It's one of the few moments Ichi feels genuinely hard to read. It's such a brilliant note to leave these two on, because the next morning, Arakawa's body is found in the ocean. The parallels back to Kazuma are obvious. His own opportunity to apologize was brief, and even then his last moments were more spent ensuring the survival of the Tojo than expressing guilt over the people he used in service of them. I do think Kazuma cared about Kiryu and Nishiki, but first and foremost, he was a man of the clan. Part of this is, again, Yakuza 1 had a very different style, an economy of time where the plot had to move quick, so this scene is as much about efficiency as it is giving us insight into Kazuma. How impenetrable a figure he was led to Kiryu reckoning over his feelings on the man for years to come. Not to mention, back then, fighting for the sake of the clan was taken for granted as an honourable act by the series. Part of why Kiryu's slow, all too late realisation over what really matters in life feels so organic is because the series itself had to make the same connection. It's only as the years went by and Like a Dragon developed its skepticism towards these archetypes and institutions did it start seeing this scene in a different light, which is why we're here now. Because Masumi is not Kazuma, he just plays the role of him in Like a Dragon, and he's a damn fine actor. And in his final moments, he's free to be himself, a man with a lifetime of regret, pain, and loss, both given and received. The Tojo destroyed his life, and he had every reason to react in kind, but in the end he didn't do it out of hate, but compassion. And in the process, he did what Kazuma never could. He got his kids out of the life. Kind of. So there we go. You did it, Yokoyama. You depicted this man's life, from grisly start to tragic end. Ichiban is shattered, the killer hasn't been caught, and Takabe warns the group should be vigilant. Back in Kamurocho, the struggle to fill the power vacuum has already begun. The turncoat Tojo captain's berating Sawashiro over Arakawa's unfulfilled promises. When Ishioda tries to pay them off and their tune changes, Sawashiro takes their earful and gives them an eyeful over it. Saying he doesn't need their help to establish the Tokyo-Omi alliance.
まあ、今東京にいる近江の残党がまとまるまでは待ってやる。それまでせいぜい母ちゃんの血でも吸っとくんだな。
Very exciting. Everyone's racing to set themselves up as a new era dawns. A pretty realistic result coming from a very idealistic act. So yeah, I loved this bit then and now. I may now respect why you did it, but I have to say, good going there, Daigo. We rejoin Ichiban, sat alone at Survive, his friends keeping their distance, unsure how to console him. Hoshino calls, telling him to come to Heian Tower.
そいつは体に毒だ。どうだ、平安楼で会わないか。俺と荒川さんが最後に会った場所だ。荒川さんが食べたのと同じ料理をご馳走してやる。
でも今は。
いいから来い。
At Heian, Hoshino makes a serious go of comforting Ichi. Being the last thing he has as a father figure, he says Masumi was at peace last night, finally getting to try Peking duck, having waited all this time to finally have it. A bittersweet resolution to this little narrative thread. Hoshino says the only one who could have ordered the hit was Aoki himself, and he wants us to get even. The Seiryu itself is ready to throw its weight behind Ichi. But after a moment's thought, Ichiban knows revenge is the last thing the boss would want. To seek it would spit in the face of all he hoped to accomplish.
それを貫くため、おやっさんが辛抱し続けた日々に報いるには、人一人の弾取って解決なんてしちゃいけねえ。
He's suddenly reinvigorated. He's going to carry the old man's torch, and with it, make Masato see the light. Hoshino is genuinely swayed.
いいんじゃねえか。お前の好きにやれ。俺が少し出しゃばりすぎちまったようだ。
This just leaves how they're going to get to the young master, and the only way to him is through Kume, which is difficult enough. His new security detail is thick, and I don't just mean they're from Osaka. Hey Kume, this one's for you. Wow, he must be more captivating than I thought. Speaking of, the gang's attention is grabbed by Aoki. What's startling to them is how it seems his father's death hasn't even irked him. He's already spinning it and the dissolution to benefit his image. It's then Hoshino returns with our money and an idea. He could never find a suitable candidate, but seeing as beating Aoki is no longer an option, at least politically, Ichiban should run. If all that matters now is getting close to Kume, then this will force him to confront us. Ichiban is in. But registration is closing tonight, so Ichi better make like a board game and go. So we're on the campaign trail, and the next time we find Kume, he's already wise to us, trying to preemptively drag our name through the mud so as to make approach impossible. Airing out our past as a murderer makes him think he has us dead to rights. Unfortunately for Kume, he's forgotten just what those rights are. Ichiban rolls in and immediately hits Kume with the switch up. The law says he's allowed to run, Bleach proposes utter adherence to the law, so should I be allowed to run or not, Kume? The man can only squirm. He's immediately cornered. This is the core argument between Ichiban and Kume, and more broadly the denizens of the Grey Zone and their detractors, and arguably, the game itself. Ichiban sees the loopholes in the law as a concession to how people aren't always perfect. The law has to have some slack as it depends on a person's ability to reasonably gauge malicious intent. To Bleach, the law is a sacred, binding text, or at least they claim so, and all the Grey Zones allow is people to abuse that which is sacrosanct, an opening for rot to spread amongst society. Kume is kinda like Chuck McGill if he got into semen retention, which is ironic because all he can do is meekly ejaculate. The conflict is obvious, the black and white letter of the law versus the spirit, and the statement about this even more so. Attempting to strictly follow the letter of the law, as Kume purports to do, is not only a fool's errand, It makes you a homunculus, an artificial approximation of a human devoid of empathy, understanding, or, riz. Earlier on, Adachi called him a victim of Bleach, and I think that is the most sympathy for the prick you'll get out of me, as I agree with this perspective. Because instead of facing the world and improving himself, he retreated into a group which told him his flaws were virtues to be celebrated. And they told him this because it made him easy to exploit. Why work on yourself when you can work for us? Fitting Ichiban's core damage type, this moment is incredibly blunt. A political rally is a convenient way to more or less yell your central theme from the van tops. So I think it's about time to give it the spotlight. As ever in this gangster drama, we have the usual suspects. Honor, brotherhood, fatherhood, revenge, duplicity. Joining the stable this time are, as we've seen, rock bottom, change, growth, nature versus nurture, and returning from 5 in a fancy new guise are masks and identities. That's a ton going on, yet they're all working together in tandem and backing up the central theme, which if you remember is encapsulated in the Japanese subtitle, The Whereabouts of Light and Dark. Yokohama revealed the driving force of the game as this: the dualities of front and back, hypocrisy and justice, the superficiality and the truth of Japanese society. This may seem like an absurdly long list of absurdly lofty goals for the series, but when you think about it, it's an apparent contradiction that Like a Dragon has always trafficked in. The heroic criminal and the corrupt cop, the sleazebag who oozes kindness versus the composed conniver, who only ever appears straight-laced to string you up. Many of the games have examined the characters in these terms: their fronts versus their backs, their masks and their true face. The difference now is applying these contrasts on a societal scale, and really digging into what they say about people, making for the most critical and overtly political game of the series thus far. In its own way, this title is just as blunt as Yakuza 5's unyielding Yume. How many times have the game and I had to mention black and white, light and dark, and make relentless use of contrast? The reason Like a Dragon doesn't get the Yakuza 5 treatment is that it's a lot more shrewd in its subject matter, not to mention much harder to sum up in a single word or phrase. It's not just black and white, it's the whereabouts, the in-betweens, the grey zones, and there are layers within both. Black and white refers to both contrasting archetypes, which it uses to illustrate the in-betweens, as well as strict adherence to rules. Meanwhile, grey zones are simultaneously literal, legal, and metaphorical. By having the theme be so broad and all-encompassing, the game effectively states the world operates in shades of grey. Reality, therefore, cannot be black and white. Just for a few examples, Ichiban's life was saved by a grey area in a criminal code. Where black and white rules at Hello Work tipexed him, a grey zone was there to make sure he wasn't erased. Hamako's exploitation of a letting loophole is the reason he and Namba found a roof over their heads, and that's what finally allowed him to sign on at Hello Work on the dotted line, in black and white. He had to go through so much grey to get there. And that's only the start. The entire Great Wall of Muscle is founded on an incredibly grey area. It's an insanely corrupt measure, but Okakubo appears genuine in his intent. It laid on a moral foundation, but from a legalistic perspective, this is just as bad as the Yamato Mark II. The moment which made Daigo decide that the game was over came about from anti-Yakuza measures which are built on weaponizing vague organised crime laws. This isn't just black and white, it's every shade in between. And before you've even hit play, this theme is present. Literally. The start menu theme, Darkness in Light, and the main menu theme, Light in Darkness, are inversions of each other. Similar, but opposite. This duality of light and dark is also found in the ultimate goals of the Arakawas. Their public face is the opposite of their true intentions. Masumi Arakawa is a mob boss who had to act out the role of the traitor in order to bring the Yakuza to a merciful end, to free men who couldn't even see the walls closing in around them. Those walls belong to Masato. Under the guise of Ryo Aoki, he talks a big game of bleaching the grey zones and stomping out crime, but his real play is subjugating the Yakuza, bending them to his will. The two inverse each other. They are another example of light and dark, and how in this duality light can blind us to cruelty, while dark hides kindness in shadows. A conflict we've seen play out in this series so many times before, even earlier this game with the nursing home scam. A really humanizing detail is how even characters we're meant to root for have stances they're black and white on until the moment they're challenged, at which point they learn the situation is far more grey than they've ever had to consider. Even Ichiban realizes more than once the world isn't as simple as he'd like it to be. The difference between him and Kume is Ichiban is capable of accepting this and incorporating it into his worldview, as opposed to Kume who gets angrier and demand the world simplify itself to accommodate him. While there is so much more to it, keeping this scene in mind, one of my ultimate reads of the game is this: humans aren't robots and the law is not our programming. The law can only be perfect when it's imperfect, because we wrote it. Grey zones of all forms will always exist. What matters is them existing for the common good, to benevolently account for our imprecision. The law, in and of itself, is not a moral good. An easy path to hypocrisy is mistaking it as such. What's righteous is doing right by your fellow man, trying to understand their circumstances rather than reflexively tear them down for it. Not being Japanese, I feel it would be rude for me to presume what Yokoyama is truly getting at when he says the hypocrisy and truth of Japanese society. So, this is from an English perspective. It's me prodding at England when I say, I think the biggest hypocrisy of society, and one I'm guilty of when I'm in autopilot, is a natural drive towards solipsism. How we judge others in black and white, and ourselves in shades of grey. We think we know all of our own motives, and remember at least some of the experiences which shaped us, or we're at least capable of assigning blame. So we absolve ourselves of circumstances while holding others to theirs. The tragedy is that if you try and treat other people with the same grace you give yourself, you're at a disadvantage. You're moving at 10 miles per hour on the autobahn of public debate, and the less patient are going to smash right through you for daring to take your time. Being fair, being thorough, has always been a handicap. Let's return to Ichiban's core goodness. His kindness seems as fuzzy as the hair on his head, but that's because he's not a hardline man. He's seen and often been victim to too much of the breadth of human experience to ever completely disregard someone out of hand. The fantasy of this game is that kindness being so strong, so compelling, and so unshakable. And it's this which allows Ichiban to practically tear Kume apart the moment the two get to talking. Ichiban has real human experience. Kume has bleachers in human rhetoric. Now, is Kume a straw man? More than a little bit, yes. But straw men are weak to fire, and Ichiban won't stop bringing the heat. So Kume throws what little pride he has to the wind and retreats on live television. And this does nothing to hurt Aoki's numbers.
極道という異例の春日候補は早速 SNS を中心に話題となっております。
役に立たない奴らばかりだ。クメといい、お前といい。
And it's in his office we find him berating Sawashiro, a far cry from the defiance he showed to the officers. He seems genuinely hurt by Aoki's disappointment in him.
お前が荒川組でそれなりの地位についたのは決して実力じゃない。周りが俺の顔色を伺ってお前を持ち上げただけだ。お前は昔から金魚の糞みてえに俺の後をついてきただけだからな。
If Sawashiro wishes to be chairman of the reformed Omi, he'll have to carry out a hit. Back in the Jinsho, we're still hunting Kume. Having learned he's making a speech in front of Janai Station, we're off to go see the loco commotion. Make some noise, and we're inches away from having him, before Han gets word the Seiryu are under attack. At their HQ, we find a massacre. A wounded Takabe tells us the Omi are headed for the chairman, and we arrive all too late.
遅えよ、イチ。お前はいつだって遅えんだ。
Psycho begs to know why kill the chairman. Well, killing Ichiban would have been Joe's preference, but he's too public. Taking away his support was just the next best option.
若は何かをやるとき裏から手回さずにはいられねえのか。絶対負けねえように保険かけずにはいられねえのか。いつからそんなになっちまったんだよ。
Sorry to say, but you were there, bud. Still, this is a great moment. Ichiban has the full measure of Masato, and that actually seems to get under Sawashiro's skin, even if only a little.
どうなってんだ、あったら。荒川のおやつさんを殺したのもあんたなのか。さあな、もうどうでもいいだろ、そんなこと。
So we get a rematch, second best dynamic intro in the game as he toys with Ichiban, which plays into the mystery of Joe. Was he just holding back last time? Did he let Ichiban get past him and into that officers meeting? Did he hope he would die there, or was that all part of the plan? His gigantic level leap and the much greater danger he presents in this fight is a great way to reinforce his ambiguity as a character mechanically. Ichiban further muddies the waters by saying getting his hands on a weapon just powers him up this much, so you can read him a bunch of different ways. Beyond that, however, the fight remains pretty simple. After the Jimas, it will take a whole lot more to feel like another step up. His ability to regenerate hit points does force the player to prioritize damage over healing, but in a 4-on-1 you have so much more room to move compared. Defeated, Ichiban demands answers. Sawashiro tells us he wasn't Masumi's killer. Aoki made the order, but for Joe, Arakawa was a no-go. Coming here, killing Hoshino, that was a one-way trip. Punishment for his insubordination. To explain why he couldn't kill Arakawa, he tells Ichiban something he'd never told anyone. The two come from much the same circumstances, scraping by on the streets and scrapping to survive. Only he had a companion. Finding out all too late he'd gotten her pregnant, he just hoped the problem would go away. And when it arrived, he made sure it would, convincing her to dump it in the coin lockers. But when the guilt got to her, she rushed back, returning to find Arakawa busting the locker open and taking their son, taking Masato. Joe was overjoyed. Problem solved. It was only years later, now alone, he spotted Arakawa, out and about with his boy. It was shortly after that Joe signed up with the family, saying if there was anyone he'd throw his lot in with, it would have been Arakawa. I've told the story pretty bluntly because that's how Joe presents it. That's what's so fascinating about this reveal to me. This story, his actions, are repugnant, but he presents them so matter-of-factly, so casually, never sugarcoating his worst moments nor acting like his best ones even begin to tip the scales. He doesn't even pull back the curtains, he rips them down, and yet even then the man remains a total mystery by never expressing any opinion of what he did. What would, for any other character, be a moment to ask for forgiveness or condemnation or even a lame, we're not so different, which I'm sure Sawashiro would sooner bury himself alive than say to Ichi, Sawashiro just sees as something which happened. He dumps it on Ichiban, on the player, and our opinion is worth less than shit to him. We also see in this flashback a rather tragic sight. While Masato was surrounded by people who loved him, none were equipped to deal with his problems. He was, in his head anyway, crippled from birth by the Tojo, then brought up amongst them. Raised by able-bodied criminals who prize strength above all else. Earlier I joked about not measuring how good a life is by the amount of violence it takes to get by, but that is the world Masato was raised in. By his only yardstick for strength, he came up very short. When he expressed frustration over his condition, all Masumi could do was avert his gaze. His role as a stony-faced Yakuza prevented him from reassuring the boy, and that's assuming his guilt would even allow him to broach the subject. Joe, meanwhile, obviously had to keep his distance, though again, that's even assuming the man is capable of providing the care Masato needed, which I very much doubt. But this must be as close as he can come to expressing remorse, by giving up his strength to the son he stole it from. So Masato was never punished, never told no, never made to feel like anything other than a person who would fracture under the lightest pressure. On the night that pressure was finally applied, he shattered, and this birthed Ryo Aoki, a persona who had the strength Masato lacked, and turned all of that bitterness back on the world which made him. But that's not all. Akane had to have made the call from somewhere, and Joe figures it would have to be the soapland in which she used to work, Shangri-La. As Joe and his girl stood by the lockers, unable to comprehend what just happened, some soapland employees arrived to rescue a second baby, the boy who would have been Masato. This is a huge reveal, but keeping the lens on Joe for a moment. If he truly hated Ichiban, why tell him this? Especially without joking or rubbing it in his face. Is this him showing that deep down he feels some shred of connection to Ichiban? Or is it him stunning Ichi into silence so he can attempt a half-hearted escape? Something the rest of the gang isn't so shaken up they can't easily stop.
本当ならこの手でぶっ殺してやりてえとこだが、まっとうに罪を償え。
まっとうにか。今まで俺の人生にそんなことは考えたことなかったよ。
I don't know what's going through your mind. And I mean that in praise of the writing. As Joe is taken away, the last thing we learn is who called in the tip. The man himself.
いつも無茶なことばかり言いやがるんだ。あんたは。頭。
I gotta say, I love Sawashiro. We just learned his whole life story, yet he remains almost impossible to nail down to me. In a game about shades of grey, he's the greyest and greatest motherfucker there is. Words probably can express my true feelings on Joe Sawashiro, but for the love of me, I can't find them under the layers of muck Joe just spread. Having both Ichiban and Masato's origin be from the coin lockers obviously makes both of their beginnings about as close to rock bottom as you can get, as well as representing a societal ill with incredibly complicated and hard to fix root causes. Sure, the game simplifies and dramatizes the incident, but only by half. Masato's origin is practically a collage of the causes of coin locker babies. Masato's unnamed mother is one of the most tragic figures in this story, and I think keeping her unnamed was a conscious choice, making her a sympathetic stand-in for some of the hows and whys which lead to such a decision. As for Ichiban being Masumi's son, it's a truly interesting twist, both for the story itself and on Kazuma, not to mention a really tragic reveal. What's interesting is how bittersweet it is, that in all of his life, Masumi only ever showed his fatherly side to Ichiban, the kid he unknowingly shoved in the locker and later the lockup. It's ironic that only Ichiban got to see the father Masumi could have been if misplaced guilt didn't stand between him and Masato. Perhaps this is the father he was about to become, all too late for both of them. I adore how Ichiban inherited his approach to forgiveness, an almost genetic need to turn the other cheek. But with all that Ichiban has just been put through, forgiveness is the last thing on his mind. Chapter 14 begins much like the last. Ichiban sat alone at Survive, memories of the past weighing down on him. Having been pushed to breaking point, he storms the Bleach offices, demanding Kume's whereabouts from the first poor thug he gets his hands on. When his answer fails to please Ichiban, he uses it as an excuse to take out his rage on him, having regressed to the angry teenager he'd become after he lost Jiro. It's a shocking reminder of just how explosive his childlike anger can be. It's quite powerful seeing the band be genuinely scared of Ichiban, and I do wish that we saw more hints that this was bubbling under the surface along the way. And then it happens. Good question, Ichiban. A better question than you could possibly know. The man knows Aoki's next move, and he was going to tell us until he saw what we were about to do. But there's still time. Meet him tonight at Gomijul. He then turns to Han for a very weird standoff. He says he saw this man die. Han explains that he replaced him, and one day, another will replace him. Han Jungi is eternal. Which would be impressive if Kiryu seemed any less so. Look, I may be a little hesitant to be happy Kiryu is here, but Ichiban confronting him at Gomijul is top shelf shit. Kiryu doesn't just invite his anger, he outright stokes the fire. Being on the other side of it, I'm starting to get why some villains found Kiryu so frustrating. Even before the fight begins, you're up against a brick wall.
意外と細かいことを気にするんだな。細けえことはねえよ。普通気になんだろ。
Ichiban is given a choice. Learn about Kiryu or Aoki's next move. Ichiban chooses right, but that's only the first part of the test.
お前とお前の仲間たちがその情報を渡すに値する相手かどうか確かめさせてもらいてえ。あいにく俺は拳で人を見るタイプなんでな。
Yeah, you know, I'm kind of the same way. Ichiban pleads to skip this part, worried his anger won't let him hold back.
あんた やりかねねえよ。
そりゃちょうどいいな。
Kiryu is so fucking cool. And man, Ichiban, that's the funniest shit you've said all game. I love dramatic irony, especially when it's about to literally smack me in the face.
はいたつら飲むんじゃねえぞ。
お前の欲しがっている宝はこの奥にある。宝の番人は俺だ。
Which brings me to a chance to return to the English dub. And returning for the English dub is Daryl Kurilo, putting on a great performance which goes to show how poor direction really hobbled him back in the old days.
Listen, I could end up killing you. Good. I'll take it.
An odd side note, but I've been playing a lot of PS2 beat-em-ups recently, and Kurilo's voice has that vintage tough guy quality.
If you want to prove your innocence, I suggest you go find a lawyer.
Which means even in a game where everyone is putting gravel in their voice, he can still rock the mic better than anyone. He feels like a piece of the old guard, and it adds a ton to him facing off against this new generation, who are voiced by a new generation of actors. Not to mention, I really like how they adapted this line.
The treasure you're after is right up there. I'm the dragon guarding it.
You know he'd say that shit. Sickest dynamic intro in the game, let's go! Okay, now you're just showing off. Little delayed Kamaki parry, and man. Have you ever been so excited to know you're absolutely fucked? I don't think anyone would argue if I called this the best fight in the game. I'm not going to, but you wouldn't argue with me. Hell of an exciting scenario. Kiryu is the dragon wall Ichiban needs to climb, and the taste is more than enough. Rolling Eyes Fall Down the Dragon Wall is a fantastic boss track, which drives home just how out of your league Kiryu is. It sounds like you're fighting a natural disaster, and we're not even talking about the man's life choices. A genuine highlight, a showdown where I feel like turn-based actually shows off some of its strengths. Which is ironic, because it does this via Kiryu breaking the rules. He'll parry you whenever he wants and he can just take multiple turns. Why? Because fuck you, he's not playing your stupid game. You're merely like a dragon. This dude's Yakuza. It really sells the idea that he's beyond you. He's not bound by the same limitations as Ichiban and crew. This battle also has a genuinely unique and kind of hilarious gimmick. Nagoshi hates the idea of Kiryu hitting women, so he just won't do that. This actually adds a novel complication to your party composition, as every female party member now increases the odds of Kiryu focusing his incredibly powerful fists on Ichiban. Though in my experience, he hated Han. He really, really hated Han. Even on a replay where I was way over leveled, this battle was still a 20-minute showdown and it remained exciting throughout. By the end of it, the entire party should be low on SP, creating a feeling of genuine exhaustion. Also yes, you can totally call Kiryu on himself. And naturally, this is another fight where all that you're winning is the winner's blessing. Ichiban is pushed to his limits, and one last blow from Kiryu sends him over the edge. Knighting Ichiban and reigniting his imagination, Kiryu taking on the form of a literal dragon in what is one of, no matter how much I love it, one of the series' hokiest moments. Ichiban stands tall through Kiryu's fire, but then he looks back and sees his allies scattered. The horror of this gives him pause. It forces him to remember what they've been fighting for. This isn't about bringing evil to heel, but standing up for good. His anger is literally burnt away, and he slays his dragon, leveling beyond his confusion. Kiryu approaches. He allowed Ichiban to vent his anger to show him just how futile an approach it was. The rage having left him, Ichiban has returned to his senses.
敵に勝ちたいんなら考えろ。向こうの気持ちになって次にどんな手を打ってくるか。どんな手を打たれたら相手が一番嫌なのか。
That's pretty rich for Kiryu to say when his enemy's biggest fear was him. It didn't take much thought to be you, Kiryu, and it's going to take more brain cells than you got left to be someone else. Okay, so let's rewind. After all that excitement, you may be wondering just what my issue with Kiryu is. Well, we can get into that as well as the rest of my feelings on the Assembly Hall brawl. The big thing is this. It hasn't even been one game since this guy was meant to walk off into the sunset. The ongoing retirement of Kiryu, which started in Yakuza 4, Successor of the Legend, continues today against Ichiban, the real successor of the legend who debuted 4 games later, in a chapter called Passing the Torch, where come next game, Ichiban is going to hand it right back. It's a good thing that game's called Infinite Wealth, because this shit's rich. It's especially bad because 6 was so emphatic about it. The guy looked into the camera and said he would disappear. I didn't much like that ending, but what I like even less is backing down from it. This goes back to my frustration with Kashiwagi, Lao Kalong, even Han to an extent, and it's an issue which has only gotten worse in the years since. If this series can't stick to its guns, not to mention the people they kill, why should I believe in anything that I'm told? Actually no, it's worse than that. Can I even believe what I see? If I can't trust witnessing a character dying as proof they're dead, can I grant weight to anything that happens? I may as well withhold my feelings indefinitely. I'd be a fool to trust you. And I really don't want to feel that way about this series. I want to be wrapped up in it. I want this shit to mean something. I do give this series the benefit of the doubt, but doubt always remains. It builds emotional distance, and I've found myself taking a step or two back. This isn't fan service, it's fan disservice. It insults your audience's investment in your stories. Kiryu reappearing one game after his retirement has the same chilling effect, because it makes developments feel utterly weightless. There's another aspect to these scenes which wasn't an issue on release, but is today. The semi-self-contained nature of these titles is done. It's over. You may have noticed I've been far more liberal about referencing future games in this video, something I've strained to avoid before now to best tackle each game as they came. This is because it's impossible to feel how I felt about Like a Dragon in 2020 in 2025. When Yokohama said he wanted Ichiban to be a catalyst for change, he meant it, and the nature of that change goes way beyond the man himself. Later entries have worked backwards, heaping additional lore and context on what Kiryu was doing here and why, and it feels like an unnecessary fixer job. Sequels are now far more sequential. No spoilers when I say the recent Pirate Yakuza even ended with a to be continued screen instead of the traditional fin. Very fishy. I'm ultimately ambivalent about this, but I am worried the series is tossing away one of its greatest strengths, how each title worked as part of a whole, while also standing pretty much alone. Links between stories have always been present, but they were never the point. Chronology was subtle. The state of the world advanced in ways which were clever but not need to know. They were bonuses for the attentive player and informed by the state of the real world. Character developments were similarly understated, playing out like the natural passage of time. Surprise was high as each and every entry was more or less its own adventure. Each game does still manage to tie up its own plot. I think we're in the danger zone when this stops being the case and we get a multi-game main plot arc. My worry now is that at any moment we could be told that what we were seeing wasn't what was really going on. Something Gaiden and Infinite Wealth do with multiple scenes in this game to weird, arguably needless effect. And I say that as a guy who likes Gaiden and loves Infinite Wealth, because that game is Yakuza 5 2.0, warts and all. The series has changed from building off of prior entries to building on top of them, when I honestly just preferred forward motion and exploring new possibilities. If fans don't totally agree with a plot beat, are RGG just going to start going back and lathering it with additional details until it works? I would much rather the series just roll with the punches and focus on moving forwards rather than looking back. Cause honestly, I'm worried the series is starting to get a little stuck in its own past and lose its confidence and energy. Putting this cynicism aside, Kiryu's reappearance does in some ways reflect the newfound optimism. First off, it allowed him to come back and free Daigo of the burden he placed on him all the way back in 2006. He got to be the father he talked about in his letter and finally do right by the kid. I really like that. In a metatextual sense, given the shared voice actor and similar Irizumi, Kiryu gets to save Nishikiyama. He sees a good man going down the same self-destructive path, only this time he gets to step in and correct him before it's too late. For how much the last few games have taken from Kiryu, I really love this for him. It's such a great kindness to his character and a demonstration of his growth. I still find this fight an incredibly contrived affair, but on a subtextual level and in terms of sheer excitement, there is so much going for it. And part of me can't help but read this as trying to take some of the sting away from how the Song of Life ended. A little encore allowing Kiryu to end on a less bittersweet note. But we know this isn't his end, because the series has changed, just as much as it stayed the same. So I suppose the torch is passed? I didn't feel like a handoff was necessary, but there we go. Kiryu reverts to his Yakuza 4 self, and these two have a chat more angled towards the audience than each other.
俺と拳を交えて何を感じた？
そりゃ、マジで強えって、本物だと思ったよ。
俺もお前という人間がよく分かった。今はまだまだだが、いずれは本物になれる男だと思ったぜ。
With getting the dragon's approval out the way, it's now time for Like a Dragon's stupidest moment. The man tapped Gomajul for info on Aoki, and found they have an assassin en route to take out Sawashiro. So after making Ichiban face himself, we're gonna have to look into a mirror. Face. In an abandoned building, we find Ishioda, and we're ambushed by the hitman.
マジかよ。力比べでも互角。
Man, Mirrorface is so fucking stupid. Okay, look, I've stuck up for a lot of moments in the series that people have derided. I often feel the complaints come from overly literal, asinine, and/or tedious readings of events, where any amount of suspension of disbelief or being able to read subtext or nuance will more than cover what the game is going for. But I am not going to bat for Mirrorface, and that's not just because I've got Ichiban to do it for me. Okay, obvious complaint first. This guy should have matched Yoradachi's job and level. But then I guess the cutscene showed he wasn't really up to speed on our lovable old traffic clerk. Yeah, that's the best defense I can think of for this character. That he's not really as destructive a force as naysayers say because he's got blind spots. How ironic. I mean, sure, he could probably fool the local constabulary, but it's not like he's gonna trick... Okay. Is there anyone in this series who isn't stupid? Okay, so with that, I was trying to stop myself from having a second point, but... Second, we're introducing Decoy Octopus into Yakuza? I can see a handful of problems with that. The only way Mirrorface works as an entity in this story is from a thematic angle. White and black, light and shadow, a twisted reflection of someone we know. The problem is, everything he could bring to the story is already perfectly served by Hanjungi. The only reflective quality Mirrorface has is when the screen cuts to black and you look at yourself asking, what the hell was that about? That would be if the game wanted to ask questions with him, because he isn't a character. He is, like Nikogata, a convenience. Or an inconvenience anyway. The one stain on what will be a fantastic ending. If his quarry was the narrative, then this guy is every bit the hitman Ishioda supposes. With the two defeated, Ichiban interrogates the guy. He did go to kill Arakawa, but something, or someone, got in the way. On that night, Tendo met with Arakawa, and had people in place to ambush Ishioda. He gathered them all in one place before making his own play.
おもろいもんや。そうなって初めてやっと椅子が回ってくる人間もおるんやからな。こんな状況にでもならない。わしにてっぺん行くチャンスはこんかった。おもろいもんですやろ。
天道。
The group is perplexed, and it seems just as predictable.
ほな、もうポチッといったれ。
Oh, nice. Is anyone going to tell the Daidoji this guy's moonlighting? I've got to say, Mirrorface is a fitting inclusion for a chapter which feels like a failed magic trick. Kiryu is simultaneously a distraction from, yet also another reason why this penultimate chapter also happens to be the game's flabbiest. Chapters 13 and 14 start on exactly the same beat, Ichiban despondent over recent losses and revelations, before an old school Yakuza helps him remember what's important, which goes to make Kiryu's cameo feel redundant. Putting that aside, what is actually achieved in this chapter? Well, not much other than hurriedly tying up Ishioda, a man who the game has repeatedly forgot. Then again, maybe the explosion didn't kill him. Maybe he was just forgotten once again. You know, I actually tracked down Ryosuke Hori to ask if he really died here. And you wanna know his response? Naze watashi no kaida ni iru no? Which I found to be a bit formal, but there it is. And then there's Mirrorface, who exists because the game has, at the very last moment, forgotten that putting Ichiban in a corner doesn't necessarily mean it's written itself into one. One which it imagines only Mirrorface could then save it from. Chapter 14 is an awkward and unfortunate, if momentarily exciting, stumble right before the finish line. And so we arrive at the final chapter, opening on a CLP van rolling lazily through Yokohama, the streets lined with bleach bastards. A message of endorsement plays over the grey zones they seek to destroy, as well as the wreckage they've already created. In Kamurocho, at the end of Nakamichi Street, Aoki prepares for a speech. There's a moment here which really sits with me.
今までの私は妖怪じみた他の先生方に囲まれながら自分が権力を手に入れることに必死だった。そのためにはまあ多少ずるいこともした。
Even if slathered in justification, this is the first time Masato reveals any capacity for guilt. He says this to his assistant, a true believer who immediately vindicates Aoki, saying that no matter what, he must have been justified if he had a noble goal, uncaring if not outright blind to this undermining Bleach's entire message. And Aoki is stunned. He just got what he's always wanted from people. Adulation, unconditional love and respect. Whatever guilt he had is immediately assuaged. He has exactly what he needs to keep going. It's an interesting moment both because we see there is humanity in him, a capacity to admit wrongdoing, but he's now in a position where he'll have his worst aspects easily reinforced. He's already destroyed everyone who could tell him no. Well, all but one. And he's number one. Ichiban makes an explosive entrance, ambushing Aoki atop his van. He makes an address to the crowd. Or the snipers, anyway. Look at this fucker pout. Aw, you sad I didn't die in your little boom? Knowing he can't back away, Ichiban pulls him in.
あんたは沢城の頭におやっさんを殺すよう指示を出した。その指示をしてる声を録音したデータがミレニアムタワーの荒川組事務所にあると頭から聞きました。明日俺らは投票が終わるまでにそいつをいただきに参上します。あんた破滅することになりますね。若。
Aoki says it's a bluff. Ichiban keeps his cool. He knows Masato won't be able to let this go. He leaves him with some parting words and returns to the gang.
おやっさんは最後まで若のことをずっと気にかけてました。沢城の頭も同じです。
And from there we do get an unfortunately clumsy little sequence. The gang convenes with Nick at Earth Angel to hide out. Ichiban lets us in on the plot. Obviously there's no recording, but Aoki's paranoia won't let him leave it alone. He'll have the whole family tearing that office apart until he has to come see to matters personally. I love this course of action. This is something Kiryu could never have conceived of. In fact, this is the kind of scheme that later entries in his saga were using against him, banking on his predictability. Kiryu was a reactive character. He never fought for change, but to maintain the status quo, to return the Yakuza to a former glory which, thanks to Zero, we know he never experienced. He's a dragon and he fights for what he sees as right. The only issue is, it's something that's never sat right with the world. Ichiban is proactive, he fights for change. True to the Ryugyo on his back, it's better to pursue the dragon than make it there and stagnate, using his own reputation as a bad liar and his familiarity with Masato to set a trap. It's awesome how the finale begins by setting Ichiban and Kiryu so far apart. So what's clumsy? Well, after this, I think someone realized they could cram in another cameo. So despite calling this place a hideout, I guess Earth Angel just isn't hideouty enough. Because Adachi says we should go actually hide out at a much better place called New Serena. Well, sounds swanky and wanky, so let's go. And it's there that Date says hello. It was lovely to see you, Date. It was, pleasantly perfunctory. And it's then we're dumped into the customary finale free roam. One last chance to tie up any loose ends. And I've got a couple. There are multiple reasons why in the minigame lineup I've left Dragon Kart for last. It's because in many ways it's the antithesis to our first side activity, Conquest. One was resigned to the southern end of the map, the other sits at the northern tip. One was the poor struggling against one another to survive. The other is a playground for the rich to compete merely for the sake of competition. One is great fun. The other is Dragon Kart. Sorry, bit dramatic, but I couldn't help myself. It is a smart use of the greater space offered by Yokohama, and really flexes just how much grander in scale and plain smooth they can make their side content now. The issue is, what Dragon Fighter's latest escapade has in scale and arguably style, it more than loses in substance. Ichiban is drawn in by far the most Ichiban aspect of Dragon Kart. This is no mere go-kart track, this is a go-kart track with weapons. This is Dragon Kart's unique selling point, and to be frank, Fighter is overselling it. Over the course of the 15 or so races you need to take part in to win all the cups and defeat the rival racers, I had maybe 3 engagements. Not to brag about being too good at Baby's first kart racer, but honestly I may have had a better time were I worse at the game. All that being good means is that just as much as my competition, I can easily outpace the fun part of Dragon Kart. There are only 2 tracks with bottlenecks which force racers into tight quarters. The rest are too open. Their layout's too wide and too full of straightaways, which allow for the racers to too easily scatter. Only the first lap has any real degree of interaction between participants, and interaction is where all the action is. Taking and maintaining the lead is easy, and at the head of the pack there's very little to do. The small arsenal of not terribly inventive weapons offer only a handful of defensive options, but none are as good as the boost, which is too useful both offensively and defensively. There's no enjoyable insanity or unfairness to the weapons. They're all overtuned to not be all that threatening. None are able to turn the tide in a moment. I think a kart racer needs that element of unfairness to keep it an actual conflict between karters. And none of this is helped by the AI being incredibly passive, which just makes passing them all the easier. There is a bit of fun in learning pickup locations and how to best thread boost pickups between boost pads while hitting the most rings for bonus items in this mode's own script shop. But it goes to show how easy the mode is that doing this is me occupying my mind while drifting, sometimes literally, to the finish line. The kart physics can be called, at best, unobtrusive. Not exciting, not fun, not rewarding to master, there's just nothing to it. It's a bit annoying how they can snag the sidewalk, which proved a greater foe than my fellow speed freaks ever quite managed. It's an ultimately shallow game. Going from pocket circuit to city streets is an advancement in size, and size alone. It lacks the addictive loop and rewarding victories of the game it spawned out of. The upgrade menu even depresses me a little. There's no tuning to figure out the puzzle of a race, just the puzzle of how long at the office I'm going to need to max everything out. In lacking Mario Kart's mix of unfairness and mechanical skill, this winds up being a mode with no character, no vibe, no excitement. It's at best a way of showing off what RGG can now achieve. Though really, what it shows is how less can often be more. In story terms, it's not much better. Fighter has nothing to do other than say at the end, "By the way, I'm Pocket Circuit Fighter," which, cool man. I'm glad to see you're doing well, but frankly I preferred you when you had Inner Turmoil. That aside, it's Ichiban defeating a cast of kooky characters one by one, and by eating his dust, they learn the true meaning of competition. Why, if this lowly peon can go from prole to pole position, I too must try harder. This brings me to why I've left it so late. Another parallel with Conquest is how they're both hamstrung by story. Conquest is stuck to the starting zone, meanwhile after a mid-game opening, Dragon Kart breaks down until the final chapter. After clearing most of the races, your penultimate rival is hospitalized until you can make it to Kamurocho. If done early, this can be tens of hours away, and his release from hospital isn't even announced. I missed this entirely on my first playthrough. Which, to be clear, isn't missing much. I'm mostly thinking about this in plot terms. I just enjoy the thought that while Tendo tears down the Arakawa office, I'm out here tearing up the streets. And that's Dragon Kart. I'm sorry to say, but if I was ranking the minigames in Like a Dragon, this one would not make a podium finish. At the end of his sub-stories, Kiryu had to face off against the Amon clan. Well, Ichiban has an even more terrifying foe, the Wamon clan. Women. There are 6 women to seduce. While this can be done early on, these women have pretty high standards. Actually, that's not quite right. It's more accurate to say they have high requirements. Each of them have 3 objectives to fulfill to open up their romance substories. First is a bespoke requirement tied to which aspect of the game they represent. Romancing Sumire takes maxing out the romance workshop. Cucking Ikari takes more brainpower than I'd have expected, getting all the Onabara certs. Ririka has us try out the job lot of the job center, and somehow this makes us look desirable instead of work shy. Iraha needs to hear 40 party chats before some pillow talk. Eri has us climb to the top of the business world before she'll climb atop us, and Psycho needs us to drink Link to Oblivion, which is the first sign we ought to be worried. These broads stand in for how broad the game is. 4 out of 6 of them also have a favourite flower. First we give them 1 bouquet, then 5, then 10. And rather than looking like a crazy person, we look like a very thoughtful crazy person. While this can be done by growing flowers and having Kashiwagi craft bouquets, the game lets you skip this. At Hamakita Park are what I call the give-up carts, or the shops of surrender, where for extortionate fees, you can just pay your way past several in-game crafting systems. It seems in this world money can buy both taste and love. It's just sold at a pretty steep markup. Lastly, each girl has a personality requirement. Now at this stage of the game, I still hadn't maxed out all of the stats, yet I had exhausted all the best sources of personality. I started scraping at the bottom of the barrel looking for any last drops of personality I can find. Is desperation a personality trait women like? I've heard they love it. I always consider it a loss when I need to break out a guide for a game because I want these to be my experience, and I consider my stumbles part of the adventure. But I gave up. I sensed a grind ahead and not the kind Ichiban was after. On trueachievements.com I found a method called the Sotenbori Sprint. There's a route through the town rich with item drops, with good odds of personality boosters turning up, not to mention 1 or 2 honk honks, because prostitutes raise your social stats, among other things. I cannot believe for the life of me that Psycho still slept with Ichiban after watching this guy rail this old woman in a back alley 5 times in a single day. But then again, maybe she was impressed. So yeah, after doing laps of Yokohama and Kamurocho, I was now running laps around Sotenbori too. I've heard about birds giving you the runaround, but this is ridiculous. But it worked, and before long I had maxed out my personality. Turns out travel truly does broaden the mind, and the bloody carbs in Ichiban's case. And well, not a word of a lie, I've got to say, never in all of my life have I put so much effort into a game just so I can have my character repeatedly sexually assaulted. These are awful, terrible stories. I'll give it to Sumire, Ririka, and Miyakoshi, at least they didn't jump Ichiban's bones while he was literally asleep. Which is a low hurdle to clear, but when only 50% of you can do it, you gotta give them props. After this, we get the final sub-story, where the 6 women learn of Ichiban sleeping around, half the time literally sleeping, and team up to take their revenge. It's such a vile ending to an absolutely noxious series of sub-stories. What's especially crazy is, these women are real. Contest winners where the prize was portraying themselves in the game. These lot can lay claim to Ichi banging a virtual character, and while it wouldn't literally be true, it's not technically a lie either. What's even more crazy is, I'm how many years into covering this series and only now realizing just how many real-life women can claim that they've slept with a Yakuza character. I've probably inspired some jealousy pointing that out, but I think there are fewer people jealous of those who can say, oh yeah, they put me in a video game. What did I do? Oh, well, I raped the main character. The pop cherry on top of all this is Kashiwagi stepping in to tell us lore we already know, as if it's some big reveal. He may as well say, you know what, Ichiban? Women are like miniguns. They spin around and kill you. And it would have said just as much as the game does in this moment. I never would have guessed in all of these romance sub-stories that Kashiwagi would be the biggest tease. Let's just add this to the list of bad shit in Ichiban's life he remains chipper in spite of. I am so sorry to end the side content on such a low note, but this is how the cookie crumbled for me. For a game I love, there is a lot of it that I'm indifferent towards or actively dislike, and much of that content is backloaded or optional. Speaking of, there isn't much to do in Kamurocho either. It doesn't have that air of cold or disconnect from prior games, which is because Ichiban's separation is a whole lot cleaner. Much of what I enjoyed here were party chats, the group reflecting on and bantering about the town. Ichiban may have lost all ties to the place, but the blow is softened. It doesn't have that same melancholy air it does with Kiryu, because he's surrounded by what matters to him now.
地元の人間から幽霊屋敷って呼ばれてそうだな。 確かに心霊スポットっぽいな。
これは俺が生まれ育ったソープランドなんだ。
ごめん。
I mean, okay, there is still some melancholy. So, while I can't go and get an ice cream before I face the final boss because, man, times really have changed, I can at least go back to where this journey chronologically began so many years ago.
いただきます。
いただきます。
As the election results are unveiled, it seems Kume is going into office. Well, congrats, Kume, but so are we. That's awesome.
よっしゃ。行くぞ！
I am happy to say this dungeon's a winner. I mean, gameplay-wise, yeah, I'm still not into this, but everything else about it is so cool, I can't help but get swept up in it. In this game's arc of power, the growth from bumbling through the Seiryu HQ to now is felt. The gang started out as a comedic farce, struggling to survive. With each battle, you do feel them becoming more of a force to be reckoned with. When they approach the Millennium Tower filled with determination and grit, they've more than earned their tower raid. The key feeling of this section is triumph, which is captured so well in the music. I love Reiwa Labyrinth. There's so much less trepidation in this track than what we've been hearing up until now. The constantly rising action matches Ichiban's own relentless ascent through the tower. This time there's no sidetracks, no wacky scenarios which throw off the group's plans. They're in control here, and it's an unbroken straight shot right to the Arakawa office. Running in parallel with that is how the Millennium Tower is an example of asset reuse done spectacularly well. Much of it follows the same path Kiryu took in Yakuza 6 with some deviations, demonstrating how all along the path Ichiban follows is similar but distinct. It wasn't just the intro. Like a Dragon is a very loose retelling of Yakuza 1. The very broad strokes are the same, but the tone, the mood, the context, the outcome, and the messages are vastly different. So the game went, so the last dungeon goes. And the way it ends is so understated. We come across a familiar room, the one where Kiryu's last tower battle came to an abrupt and bloody close. Kiryu's methods were no longer working. They led him into a deadly trap. This time, the roles are reversed. Ichiban may not make it to the roof, but his approach is the one the modern world needs. And in this moment, in this way, he can take one step beyond Kiryu. This is, to me, a far better symbolic passing of the torch. We've surpassed one dragon, but there's another left to slay. Arakawa rolling in. Such a sick entrance. In the office, Tendo awaits. No data, but he's found the drink at least.
よう、探し物は見つかったかい？天道。
そないなもん、あったところで何の証拠にもならんで。
それでもあの人にとっちゃあっちゃならねえもんだい。だからあんたまで借り出されたんだろ。ご苦労なこった。
It dawns on him. He's fallen right into Ichiban's trap. As the two argue, the man mocks Masumi for not realizing he wasn't the only player in the game, stoking Ichiban's fury.
荒川がこの世の最後に見てたのは、このわしのとびっきりキュートな笑顔や。
This shit does such a great job hitting all the notes to get you pumped for this final showdown. Tendo insulting Ichiban for his beginnings is perfect. It's one last reminder of how far he's come. Meanwhile, the man's smug, cocky attitude makes you want to wipe that beaming smile right off his face.
せやけど、これでしまいにせい。最後にてっぺんとんのはこのわしやで。踊れの成り上がり話はこ ここまで
こいつを
Here we are. We've made it to the mechanical final boss of Like a Dragon, and sadly it's not that impressive because gameplay-wise, this guy isn't that oppressive. It's one guy, without much crowd control potential, and his trick of occasionally taking more than one turn isn't quite as surprising the second time around. His combos are a bit tricky to pick up the block timings for, though again, not all that impressive. There's no new spin they can put on the gameplay to set Tendo apart, besides testing if you've learned to use Ichiban's Peerless Resolve, allowing you to tank his heavily telegraphed one-hit kill. The issue is, it's testing one very specific move, one which is easy to forget given how easy the game has been up until this point. I guess that could be called a skill issue, given one of the skills of this genre is memorizing your skill set, but it's still a really flaccid escalation to end on. A shame for the skill that's keeping Ichiban erect. The funny thing is, given I'd had a whole one game over on my first playthrough, I don't think I even knew Peerless Resolve existed. Yet I still beat Tendo first time thanks to sheer dumb luck. So if you're stupid like me, this fight is a roll of the dice. You're not up against a boxer, but boxcars. Narratively, I wouldn't call this fight a knockout, but I'll at least say it's a TKO. Tendo has few appearances in the game, but he does have presence. Yet he still lacks a certain level of involvement, which makes him feel a little underwhelming as a boss dramatically. But he is a suitably daunting opponent physically, and we've got no shortage of symbolism going on with his design. Tendo's exaggerated appearance is noteworthy. He's reminiscent of a classic mustachioed aristocratic type, the kind of guy who should be standing like this if he's taken up boxing. It's really distinctive, and it gels with him showing his true condescending colours, and reminding us of how polite society sees Ichiban one last time. We have a reversal of Yakuza's 1 and 5, sort of, in that we're now closer to a Kart facing off against a dragon. And in JRPG terms, Ichiban is getting his Dragon Quest ending, an Azure Dragon. So while in raw narrative terms Tendo may feel a little shaky, aesthetically he tells more than enough of a story to make up for it. There's a lot going on and it's all the coolest shit possible. His boss track triplet after triplet hits just as hard as he does. It's a relatively slow-paced track, which really makes it feel like you're only going to win if you can go the distance. Ichiban's simps are practically drowning, they're only on the fringes of this song, having small bursts of energy when the instruments relent for a moment, making Ichiban and the player out to be mere specks when set against the titanic Tendo, and it makes me want to sink his aspirations all the more. The party banter too is so good. The gang are all talking about how absolutely terrifying this guy is, meanwhile Ichiban is literally too angry to die.
どんな奴だろうと関係ねえ。許さねえぞ。天道!
Ichiban is simply too determined to be afraid of who he's up against. At this point, there is nothing which can possibly stand in his way, and by tricking Masato and Tendo, he's already overcome them. This is why it's a shame that Peerless Resolve doesn't quite hit for me. Ichiban's life story is the entire world conspiring to keep him at rock bottom, yet he just refuses to stay there. He's getting back up, and you know what? He's bringing some friends along for the ride. The final boss spotlighting this as a literal mechanic is so cool. It's just a shame that it feels so roundabout. While our victory is in doubt, Aoki's appears to be anything but. A historic sweep for the CLP. The man is on top of the world, unaware it's all about to come crumbling down. With the crowd in disarray, our man steps in to deal with a killer blow, revealing Aoki's true identity and connection to Masumi Arakawa as the man is hurried off stage. Enraged, he rushes for the office, trying to get any information he can out of a confused Horinuchi, who practically begs him to stay away from the tower. Naturally, Aoki is incapable of listening to the man who he's done so much of this to show up. All over a slight the man himself probably can't even remember.
これを一番がやったってのか?
He's number one, Chief. And down for the count. It seems matters have been tendoed to. And with that, Aoki drops his guard.
はったりだったのか。そうか。そうだったか。こいつらにはまだ他に仲間がいるはずだ。
で、どうせと。
全員見つけ出して殺せ。出た死体は埋めるなり溶かすなり始末しろ。全員確実に殺すんだぞ。またどん底から死に損なってくるなんてことがないようにな。
どうだい俺の演技力は。
一番お前。
The mastermind behind the Kamurocho 3K plan is caught in 4K, thanks to the help of... Mirror face. This is Aoki's greatest flaw blowing up in his face. It's a shame it's this character that gets us over the finish line. Aoki is flabbergasted to be outplayed by Ichiban, but as we've seen, while Aoki could only flip through the pages, Ichiban could read him like a book.
バカ。あんたを止めるにはもうこうするほかなかったんです。あんた、もう自分自身でも止まり方わかんなくなっちまってんでしょ。
I'm gonna be real with you, Ichi. I think the last time this guy knew how to stop himself was when he literally had breaks. One thing I really adore about this ending, Ichiban has spent the whole game tearing the mask off of every character, revealing that they're more complex than they'll ever let on. What's great is how the big mistake the villains make is assuming that Ichiban is exactly as simple as he appears until it's too late. If you think Ichiban's stupid, you're just falling into the same trap as the antagonists. Ichiban lays out Masato's every last flaw. And Aoki admits, true or not, the only way is forward. Going back to Yakuza 1 parallels, it's cute that this moment composites two of the boss fights, with the slimy politician and the brother we're fighting to save being one and the same. And just like good old Jingu, he even gave us some evidence. Far less annoying to boot, too. Hey, I saw you run into that wall. That's a failed retreat. 0 out of 10 game. The gang are on their last legs, but they urge Ichiban to go on ahead while they hold the line.
ありがとよ。おめえらは最高の仲間だ。
One cheeky snap to commemorate the camaraderie, and we're off. So, the game has saved the best for last. It may seem like a backhanded compliment to call what is in essence an interactive cutscene the best fight in the game, but it's my video. First off, I need to return us to the game's opening, Masumi's old life on stage. Ichiban and the two bosses all carry a major colour motif from Kabuki. Ichiban's red representing passion and heroism. Aoki's blue demonstrates not only villainy, but sadness, jealousy, and fear. Emotions he used to rule and which in turn ruled him. Oh my god, bro, it's just like Devil May Cry. Tendo's brown, meanwhile, is the colour of ogres, monsters, and spirits, foreshadowing his grim nature and probably not the idea he's a ghost. His dragon, meanwhile, has both red and blue. Commanding fire and water communicates that this was a man playing all sides in this conflict. Much like Masumi performed under a false name and hid his scars, history repeats with Masato. In that first scrap, we fought Ryo Aoki, governor of Tokyo. Up here, his name is swapped out for Masato Arakawa, and with that, no family affiliation, no job title, no CEO of Iwami shipbuilding, and on Ichiban's end, the artifice is further stripped. Rather than whatever fantastical job you may have been playing as, Ichiban is returned to his freelancer role. Because this isn't a battle he's hyping himself up about, it's a fight he didn't want to have to pull his brother back from the brink. To him, this isn't a heroic showdown, but something he has to do for his sake. The turn-based gameplay actually takes on a new angle. It makes me feel like Ichiban is hesitant to hurt Masato, and it's something he has to will himself to do. And the music is perfect. I love Ism so much. Instead of some epic sweep, it's a deeply melancholy song for a man who's thrown everything away in vainglorious pursuits and self-justification. For long stretches, Ichiban's synths and Masato's orchestra aren't even in contest. They merely run alongside each other, representing how these two came from the same place and how their lives ran in parallel. Eventually, the synthetic sounds fade as Ichiban disappeared from Masato's life, and for a moment the song spirals into deeper sadness. That's before it kicks into high gear, and in there we get some distorted guitars to give it a classic Yakuza feel. This is a tragic showdown between brothers, the kind we've seen play out before in this very tower. I've seen comments saying there are some traces of For Whose Sake in here, but I can't for the life of me pick them out. The song then returns to where it began, the orchestra and the synths in their original parallel. Just as we finally unmasked Masato Arakawa, Ichiban never truly lost himself. The illusion is further dispelled as we get our one and only boss QTE. The turn-based nature of the fight is still there. The two trading blows one after the other, just going to town on each other, and that's until they simultaneously break order, and from there it devolves into a scrap. Years of anger and frustration just exploding out of them. But this was never a contest. This is still Coughing Baby versus Crazy Baby, and I'm betting it all on red. With one final punch, Masato is done. But Aoki still has some fight in him. One last desperate attempt to get Ichiban to see things his way. Ichiban is so great in this moment. You can see how tired he is of this childish, self-congratulatory parade this man has going on. And one last smug patience-testing comment is all it takes.
人間にはな、二つの種類がある。使う側と使われる側。
だったら使われる側は犠牲になんのも仕方ねえってことかよ。
多少は分かってきたか。
ふざけてねえ!
Out and out screaming in his face, we see Aoki back off in terror. Ichiban follows with a pretty powerful speech, one which I find interestingly off base. The two could only ever see in each other what they lacked and longed for in themselves. Ichiban saw Masato as having a loving family who would always look out for him. Meanwhile, Masato saw Ichiban as able-bodied, powerful, able to assert himself in the world. What Ichiban took for granted, Masato longed for, and what Ichiban longed for, Masato only ever saw as part of his restraints. When Ichiban promises to help him rise up from rock bottom, this is what rock bottom meant to him. It's something Ichi couldn't fix for him back then. In fact, he represented part of what rock bottom was. Still, Aoki is finally silenced. Though as the cops file in and are told what's going on, it's made crystal clear he isn't going quietly. Ichiban's tone 180s as he pleads with Masato not to get himself killed, but he doesn't care. All he has left is making sure Ichiban knows exactly how much he hates him.
つくづく何から何まであのクソ親父にそっくりなんだよお前は。そういうところが昔から好きになれねえんだよ。
He drags the cop into the elevator, and as the adrenaline wears off, it dawns on him just how screwed he is. The will having left him, he stumbles down Nakamichi. Where hours ago he made a speech to an adoring crowd, the masked bystanders are shocked to see the real Aoki. So much so they can't see the shattered man himself stumbling down the street. He winds up drifting to the place where it all began, seemingly surprised by himself, but not a surprise to Ichiban.
言ったでしょう。俺は若がどんな人間か。
Now, each game in the series has a scene or two I'll just come back and rewatch occasionally. Most often it's the hype moments, the highs, the scenes I want to watch when I want to get myself pumped up. But there are a handful of emotional scenes, and it's this one I just keep coming back to when I really want to feel stabbed in the gut. Masato realizes he doesn't have it in him to kill Ichiban. He thinks on the locker, where he began, and on the night he learned Yumino's true feelings, the night Ryo Aoki began. She wound up marrying Horanuchi. A young Aoki was invited to a party to celebrate the man's promotion to commissioner. It's there he ran into Yumino yet again, totally blind to who he was. Masato breaks down at the memory of her calling Aoki bright and sophisticated.
だとさ笑えるだろどうだ傑作だろ
若
所詮そんなもんだったんだ
He's lost it all over again. But there's one thing, and one person in this world, he still holds power over. I'm kind of aware my talking over cutscenes in this game is, in a way, unavoidably making them worse. So, I'm gonna let this one play, and then spend way longer talking about it.
まあ俺自身弱くて醜い自分が嫌で必死にもがいた結果がそうなったんだろうけどな。
そりゃ違いますよ若。おやさん、荒川の親父と沢城の頭だけはずっと本当のあんたのことだけ見てたんですよ。俺もそうです。無所出て最初に青木亮って人間を見たとき、それが荒川雅人だってすぐ分かりました。間違えるはずがない。大事な人なんですから。
またお得意の家族愛でも語るのか。
ちげえ、そんなんじゃねえ。あんたがどんなに悪いことしても、なんで最後まで荒川のおやつさんも沢城の頭も俺も放っておけないのか。そりゃな、理屈じゃねえ、心の根っこの部分で繋がっちまってるからなんだよ。好きとか嫌いとかそんな割り切れた感情じゃねえ。誰も本当の俺を見てねえだとふざけんなよ。みんな放っておけねえんだよ。放っておいたことなんて一度もねえんだよ。あんたのことよ。おやっさんや沢城の頭の気持ち、いい加減分かれよこのバカ野郎が。
一
あんた嫌がるかもしれねえけどよ、やっぱり若と俺は兄弟なんすよ。だから若には死なないでほしいんですよ。俺お願いです、お願いですから分かってください。お願いです。
Ichiban did what Kiryu couldn't way back when. He talked his brother down from the ledge. There's so much about this I love. Nakaya's performance is impeccable. One of the man's great talents, which we saw him pull off back in Zero, is how he's able to weave so many emotions together. After one last snide comment causes Ichiban to finally snap, to finally let Masato Arakawa know exactly how he feels about him. So much love, anger, and pain is threaded into this speech. The way he pauses to find the right words and at times outright explodes into others, slowly losing the energy until he's just out and out begging Masato to please understand him, to not just shrug this off like he's done everything else. It's both a lifetime and roller coaster of emotion in what is some of the series' best acting. If the player has been invested in the story, they've likely experienced a ton of frustrations towards Masato. Seeing Ichiban share that frustration before bringing it back to just how much he cares is such a great way to handle it. The reason I believe this finally gets through to Masato is twofold. Ichiban forcing Masato to realize his, Masumi's, and Sawashiro's love was never founded on logic fundamentally rattles his worldview. His conception of himself that he was kept around out of obligation, and that Ichiban's devotion to him was only ever out of devotion to someone else. What finally makes it sink in, however, is the fact that Ichiban is begging for his life here. At any point before now, Masato could file away anything Ichiban did as somehow self-serving. Before, when Sawashiro and Masumi tried to save him from himself and drag him from his evil path, he thought they were acting against him, not for him. He can't think that way now. Ichiban has nothing to gain by begging for him to live. If all Ichi cared about was winning, he'd be up in the Millennium Tower making a statement. But he's here. There's no conceivable ulterior motive, there's no angle, there's no play, there's no logic. And all that leaves is love. Masato can't rationalize his way past it. It's the classic tragedy, and it lands so perfectly. The man had what he wanted all along, but he had to hit rock bottom to see the light. I even like the English dub of this scene, and it brings with it its own dramatic resolution. In the Japanese, Ichiban pleads with Masato to understand he truly does care for him. But the English plays this beat differently, with Ichiban begging Masato not to kill himself because he couldn't bear to watch him die.
Don't make me watch my brother die.
This could be the first time anyone has actually asked anything of Masato. All his life, he's had people waiting on him hand and foot, which only solidified his self-image of being weak and useless. This makes it an especially poignant thing to ask. Ichiban begging him to live in this way shows that he never saw him as a burden to be put up with, but as a person with innate value. He never needed power and dominion to have worth. Seriously, I come back to the English dub from time to time because it's such a powerful take on this moment, and it lines up perfectly with both characters. Like much of the English dub, there are parts of the scene I find a bit much.
All you had to do was ask!
But Tang takes the edge out of his voice exactly where he needs to for his emotions to cut deepest. It's a fantastic performance for a really demanding scene. I know I wind up just saying, I love this, I like this, what I like here is... I probably say it a bit too much, but I love this scene so much, and I feel like I've undersold just how much it hits me. Masato puts the gun away and calls his secretary. He's about to make an order, but then he thinks better of it. For the first time in his life, he chooses to trust in another's judgment. He looks at Ichiban with a smile finally free of guile, a deserved pride for taking his first real step as Masato Arakawa. And then it happens. We should have killed him.
青木さんの正義は漂白された真っ白なものだと信じてたのに。でも、まだ間に合う。本当の正義は勝つんです。
Kume takes his leave as Masato collapses, dying in Ichiban's arms after giving him some last words, with a look of real contentment on his face. Ichiban steels himself, hoists him, and makes the same run Masumi made all those years ago. That's our ending, and it's one that really does me in. Aoki's actions catching up to him the moment he's about to turn over a new leaf, just as he's about to face true justice, but one of his misguided true believers snatches that away. He takes a moment filled with shades of grey and makes it a black and white one. It's one of Like a Dragon's absolutely perfect scenes, the culmination of a game's worth of themes, character relationships, and bookends all crashing together at once and sweeping Aoki away with them. Over the credits we get Ichibanka by Shonen no Kaze, who if you'll remember did Born to be Wild for Kurohyo, as well as Bubble and Kurenai for Yakuza 0. So hey, holy shit, we're getting the licensed tracks now. Cool. Ichibanka makes me wish these games still had intro videos like the PS3 era. It's a good credit song, if a bit of tonal whiplash after that ending by being as celebratory and upbeat as it is. Also because this track is welcoming Ichiban to the series. Credit to AU19 for the translation as the chorus goes, taking flight, heated as hell. For whom we celebrate, welcome Ichiban. Go forth and lead a wonderful life. Sounds a lot cooler when sung in Japanese and not said out loud by an idiot. And you know what? After all this shit, that's exactly what Ichiban deserves. And hey, nitpicks aside, still a fantastic song, still works for credits, a perfect hype piece outlining Ichiban's determination and drive, and letting us know he's ready to deliver ruthless justice and cut through this new era. Oh yeah, god, that's another change, isn't it? Outside of the game, obviously, but this is the first of the Reiwa era. A new generation for a new era. And we're not yet done. There are some post-credit scenes. Back in Kamurocho, Adachi confronts Horinuchi atop the new police station. The commissioner tries to hurry Adachi along. Come on, out with your business. But Adachi is going to take his time. He wants to enjoy this. He produces evidence of Horinuchi's ties to Aoki, already sent to the necessary authorities, naturally, and outlines just how deeply caught Hori is, savouring every detail.
ただその大義名分のついでにあんた自身も自由に使える金を手に入れてたんだろ数百万数千万いやもっとかまあデータを細かく見りゃわかる賄賂を配って治安悪化の責任からも逃れつつそこから抜いて小遣いまで手に入れるやっぱり出世する人は違うね貴様俺はなずーっとあんたのその顔が見たかったんだ
As he's about to be taken away, Adachi calls out one last time. He's about to bring up Masato, how that young punk he once insulted at the club is the very reason for his downfall. But Adachi stops. He realizes how much of an insult it would be not to Horinuchi, but to all that Ichiban and the young master went through. He lets this part of his vengeance go, not tainting it with this needless bit of cruelty. It's very easy to forget that this was part of the plot, as the party's own motivations so easily fall into the background from chapter 5 onwards. We don't see Number at his brother's wedding, or Saiko attempting to reconnect with her family. Of the party, it's only Adachi that gets a conclusion. But it is a sweet note to end his arc on. He hasn't become some paragon of virtue, he's still the lovable old fart we've spent most of the game with, but Ichiban and his struggle did mean something to him, and his respect shines through. Back in Yokohama, Ichiban offers a prayer to the Arakawas. Number asks if he wants to confirm his lineage with a blood test. When Masumi asked Ichiban if he wanted to meet his real parents, he hesitated. But now he has his answer.
やだね。俺の親父は2人いんだ。
And Dragon Quest.
桃源郷の店長、春日二郎と荒川真澄。
As ever, the series' themes of found family remain strong. These men, and Dragon Quest, shaped him. A DNA test would mean less than nothing. Saiko rushes in to hurry them to the funeral, and thank God, he remembered to change. Talk turns to Daigo and Watasei's new venture. Ichiban is invited to join them, Majima mentioning it's the boss's unfinished business. But Ichiban decides to stay. He has to repay the people of this town, and he'll finish Arakawa's work in his own way, much to Number and Saiko's relief.
俺が来てからこっち、カムロ町じゃ鳴かず飛ばずだった自分は、この町でかけがえのない仲間を持つことができました。けど、俺はまだその恩を一つも返せちゃいません。おやっさん。若。
Out on the street, he finds himself surrounded by all the friends and allies he'd made along the way, all worried he was going to skip town. Not wanting to repeat his hokey speech, he leaves them to it. They all laugh and joke, hoping they're the reason he's decided to stick around. As Ichiban looks down from the bridge, Masato's last words echo through his head. What's powerful is, when looked at a certain way, Ichiban ends the game right back at rock bottom, and I don't mean that purely literally. Back at the start, he expressed terror at the thought of losing his life and family and having to start over from scratch. Now, he's changed the face of Kamurocho, Sotenbori, and his new home of Yokohama. He's played a part in destroying the institution he committed his life to, as well as its lifelong rival. He's lost every tie he had. His family is gone, Masato's passing severing the one final link back to the life he started out fighting so hard to maintain and hoped to return to. Not bad going for his first time in the protagonist role. The very thing he feared all the way back in Chapter 1 has come true, and is so much more total than he could have feared back then. Yet here he is, looking up from rock bottom with a winning smile, ready to face whatever may come. And this time he isn't alone. He's surrounded by the people whose own lives he helped raise up. And now, there's nothing stopping him from climbing right up alongside them. It's an absolutely beautiful end, and bookend, to the story. Go on, Ichiban. Go forth and live a wonderful life.
どん底まで行きゃ、あとは上しか行く道がねえ。どん底から見える景色ってな、真っ暗じゃねえ。地に足つけて上を見上げりゃ、希望で輝いてんだ。 あんたの言う通りですよ、若。
I love Yakuza 7. Story-wise, this sits among the series' greats. The plotting is smooth, the twists are thrilling, and the intrigue is relentless. The theming has the all-encompassing nature of 5, but with a much slicker and thoughtful edge, which is all the more impressive given the much heavier subject matter. The ambition just leaks from every pore. Ichiban makes an amazing debut. He immediately shows us what the series can explore beyond Kiryu. I hope I haven't put people off with the constant allusions back to the old dragon, but I can't help but find it fascinating how inverting this character resulted in such a rich one, and I find those connections endlessly fascinating to delve into and pull apart. If there's one last tie between the two I want to end on, it's this, and yeah, this will sound sappy. Let me boil down how I look at the two. Kiryu is the impossible ideal. He's the man I know I could never be. When I'm playing as Ichiban, I wind up viewing Ichiban as the man I'm failing to live up to. Kind, accepting, charismatic, a joy to be around. As silly as it is, there's no small part of me that wishes I had the confidence to strive to be more like Ichiban. The series has always found light in darkness. It's something I've always prized about it. Its optimism feels so genuine because it doesn't sugarcoat how rough life can be. Ichiban exemplifies that. He's a man who has every reason to hate the world. And it's not that he's too stupid to realize it, but doing that would be failing himself. And that's why people gravitate towards him. The party are all lovable, building from the ensemble cast writing of 4, 5, and 6, and giving them such rich personalities. Every minute spent with this party is a joy. I just want to uncover more about them, and the game offers plenty to learn. As a game, I do find Like a Dragon lacking. I don't care for much of its side content, and its combat mechanics are real balanced and simple. I struggle to connect to the narrative via gameplay, and often find it saps energy from the moments which require excitement. I respect the change and think it was cleverly handled thematically, but man, this game for me really survives on the strength of its writing, and in that field, it's Herculean. It does help that much of its gameplay is in getting more of that sweet, juicy story and writing, because that's exactly the carrot on a stick which motivated me through it 3 times. As for writing about it, I hate to say, but this has been one of the trickiest scripts I've ever done. Granted, I kind of feel like that after every script nowadays because I'm trying to up the ante, but this one was a jump. More than ever, I felt a need for this to be perfect. I can't do perfect, but my brain will always trick me into thinking it's possible. A big part of that was that for a long time, I had been intending to leave the series here. Even if that's something I'm no longer sure about, my brain had gone into grand finale, gotta be the best it can be mode. Putting that aside, we're 8 games deep. This was in my head a far off thing that I'd never actually make it to, yet here we are, at the end of it. The goal system I used to set these videos as milestones, I blew through much faster than expected. And that system is gone now. I don't even remember if Yakuza Like a Dragon was one of them. But I do remember figuring this had to be the perfect endpoint. I naively assumed, hey, I've finished the Kiryu saga, so I can ring in a new character and the series can go off into the sunset. And I can return to being a more casual Yakuza fan. And with the series name change to Like a Dragon, it felt even more perfect. I've done it! I've completed the Yakuza series! And I'm proud of that, or I'm trying to be. I struggle to feel pride in anything I do. I'm at the stage where I panic that each new video will be the one where I hit the wall. I'll burn out, run out of new observations, I'll get stale and boring, or maybe even come to resent the games. I would hate for the energy and passion for the series to crash and burn in that way. Writing these videos takes months. I like to take my time with a game, to let my thoughts percolate and do research. Each time, I've only grown a deeper appreciation. But the worry never leaves, it only grows stronger. It has also meant at this point that I have fallen very far behind with the series. Part of the reason I haven't done Judgment is a mix of my worries and that inability to keep up. I've just never found time to play it all the way through, and spending months of the year thinking about Yakuza, covering spin-offs started to feel like a risk. And well, when I started these videos, Yakuza wasn't as big. Want to see my earliest Yakuza related content? Uploaded May 12th, 2014. That's 11 years ago to the day that I'm recording this audio. To anyone who got into the series in recent years, you may not know just how small this thing used to be. It was a group of enthusiasts importing copies of games Sega had no intention of shipping. The series had flopped in the West. It just wasn't connecting with us on a scale which made it worth it. It's a different world now. They took a punt on 5, that did well enough to get a 0, and that came out at exactly the right time to explode in popularity. On this, the series' 20th anniversary, that game will be re-released, which... fine, can't wait to watch the cutscenes on YouTube. On a brighter note though, the series is now safe, popular, and much as I still love it, it's a very different scene than when I started. It doesn't need me saying anything about it because the conversation is pretty spirited. I hope I can still offer a new way to look at the games as well as put new eyes on the games. That's what I want these videos to do, to help you appreciate them all the more. Not just in the way I'm talking about, but to do your own digging and see there are themes to be read into and characters to be turned over and examined. If my thoughts can bolster yours, that's what I'm after. The series has changed, in some ways I like and in a few I don't. But when I look at me 11 years ago, when I look at this 11 years ago, tossing an imported copy of 5, probably my favourite entry, onto my bed, I know I should be grateful that the series has pulled itself back from that. Even if there is undeniably some romanticism in being in on something small. So yeah, the series has changed, as much as it has stayed the same. The Kiryu saga was only over for a minute, and Infinite Wealth makes me feel like I have unfinished business. I haven't completed the Kiryu saga. It's still ongoing. Maybe that one wraps it up. Who can bloody say at this point? I've slotted more thoughts on future entries into this video on the slim chance this is my last outing with the games, because more than anything else, I want to end on a high and not do these games a disservice. But, god man, Infinite Wealth is exactly my kind of heart bigger than its head entry in the series, which I love, which more than the cleaner entries, I really relish talking about. That's actually a big part of what I love with these games when looked at in the bigger picture. Sometimes the stories are super clean and well delivered, sometimes they go full throttle into Stupid Town, and somehow that's often where I feel they're all the more thoughtful, even if those thoughts are scattered and messy. It's like the games are filled with so much they have to express that they're not going to waste time putting those thoughts in order. These games are human in that way. Messy and weird. They have their moments of composure and brilliance, and moments of passionate insanity, and I love it for both. If I'm not done now and I do go on to Infinite Wealth, all I ask is for some time on that. I already broke my 1-a-year streak with this video. I want to apologise to the people who've asked me for judgment over the years, and I've always given wishy-washy answers before now just deciding, no, it has to be mainline. It's a strength as much as a weakness to not tie yourself down, but I get how frustrating it is to be on the other side of it. It's not a slight against judgment, it's me trying to be prudent. I did wonder if I was going to leave Yakuza what other series I'd do. Even if milestones on Patreon are no longer a thing, I figured that could be a fun thing to keep up. And Kojima was my first thought. Anyway, sorry for ending this on an awkward ramble. What I'll say for now is, I don't know if I'll do Infinite Wealth, but it, in all likelihood, looks like it's going to happen at some point. The problem is, this feels like such a clean stopping point still, and I really want to focus on Jank and take a mental breather with some easy vids for a while. I want to go back to that for a bit. Names have been scrolling by for a while now. These are my wonderful patrons, the reason this is happening in the first place. I thank each and every one of you for your patience and your faith in me. Look, at $1, doesn't matter, everyone gets thanked if you donate. At $3, you get access to scripts and notes, which are massive this time, and feature me going crazy wondering if Ijincho Fin Sake was part of the game's theming of the rich taking from the poor. And at that point, even I stopped and realised I was going slightly insane. At $5, you get access to Afterthought videos, where I go over everything that didn't make it into the video, and primarily do a Q&A, answering viewer questions and so on. This is to Snakera. I haven't hit rock bottom just yet, and I wish you all much greater fortune.